If you missed your favorite show or interview, visit episodes on our website at theworldtoday.news. Our live shows are also on X, Facebook, YouTube, Rumble, Kick, and Twitch. Now there really is no reason to miss out on anything on theworldtoday.news.
For The World Today, this is James O'Neill. A Russian drone strike hit a bus carrying mine workers near the Ukrainian city of Dnipro, killing 15 people and injuring at least 7, according to Ukrainian emergency services. The attack sparked a fire that was later extinguished. Ukraine's largest private energy firm said the bus belonged to one of its mines and called the strike a terrorist attack. The incident came as President Volodymyr Zelensky announced that peace talks involving Ukrainian, Russian, and U.S. delegations would take place February 4th and 5th in Abu Dhabi. Additional Russian drone strikes injured civilians elsewhere, including at a maternity hospital in Zaporizhia, despite a temporary pause in attacks on Kyiv. Former Russian President Dmitry Medvedev said Russia is not interested in a global conflict, but warned that the risk of world war remains high. Speaking to TASS, the deputy head of Russia's Security Council said Moscow has repeatedly warned NATO against further expansion and Ukraine's membership, arguing Western refusal to negotiate led to the Ukraine conflict. While welcoming renewed U.S.-Russia contacts, Medvedev said a global conflict cannot be ruled out, citing declining restraint among major powers. He also warned that the expiration of the New START treaty on February 5th would further erode trust and increase nuclear risks. The United States is not prepared to launch strikes on Iran because it needs to deploy additional air defenses to protect U.S. forces and regional allies from possible retaliation, the Wall Street Journal reported. While Washington has sent a large naval force, including the USS Abraham Lincoln, officials said strikes are not imminent. The Pentagon is moving Patriot and THAAD air defense systems to bases across the Middle East. Iran's Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei warned that any U.S. attack would trigger a regional war. President Trump dismissed the warnings, but said diplomacy remained possible. Iranian and Russian officials also indicated that negotiations between Washington and Tehran may still be progressing. China's communist regime has given its first official response to the removal of 2 top generals, framing the move as part of an anti-corruption drive. A spokeswoman for the Taiwan Affairs Office said the purge showed the party's zero tolerance for corruption, but avoided specifics. Analysts say the vague response and official silence suggest deep internal power struggles and weakening military cohesion. References to the ousted generals were later scrubbed from official transcripts. Experts argue corruption is a pretext for political infighting, leaving major leadership vacancies and raising concerns about command effectiveness and regional security, particularly regarding Taiwan. India has allocated a record $85 billion for defense in its 2026-27 budget, a 15% increase following clashes with Pakistan in May of 2025. Finance Minister Sitharaman said the spending would strengthen military capabilities, with $23 billion set aside for capital expenditures. Defense officials said modernization is a priority after missile-heavy fighting highlighted the need for long-range strike capacity. Funds are expected to support purchases of fighter jets, naval vessels, drones, and missile systems. Leader of the opposition party, Kevin Badenoch, raised the pressure on Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer during PMQs.
To collaborate more with our long-standing ally, Japan. But let's turn to China. Of course Britain should engage with China. Even though the Chancellor wasn't allowed to go, even though they are an authoritarian state who seek to undermine our interests, even though they spy on us, sometimes within the walls of this building, even though they fund regimes around the world hostile to our country, they are a fact of life, a global power, and an economic reality. So let me be clear. It is not the Prime Minister engaging with China that we take issue with. What we are criticizing is his supine and short-termist approach.
We'll be back with another news break at the top of the next hour. This has been James O'Neill for The World Today.
Hi, my name's Michelle Tankey and I'm the Volunteer Manager at the Lost Dogs Home. We've got 145 incredible volunteers that help us with a wide range of activities, including helping out in the laundry, taking dogs for a walk, doing activities with our enrichment program, administration, gardening, you name it, they're helping us around the shelter. Whether it's blowing bubbles to entertain kittens waiting for adoptions or even taking a dog for a walk, it's such an incredible positive impact on the animals. Volunteers are so important and special to this shelter because they support us in caring for thousands of animals each year. The impact they have enables us to do far more for the animals than we would be able to. For example, we can get on top of the huge amount of laundry we have. So the volunteers allow us to clean thousands more blankets than we could. It's incredible the amount of gifts that we're given by the public. We're so grateful for it. So if we get some toys, we can give them directly to puppies straight away to play with, or towels, we can take them to our vet hospital for them to use immediately. So it's a really important job to help staff with. I would say to someone who's interested in volunteering to please get in touch. We would love to hear from you. We have an application form on our website that you can fill in, so please just detail all your skills and experience you can offer the shelter, and we'll be in touch when a suitable role comes up.
People might tell you that Lyme doesn't kill people, but we are losing people. People disappear from their lives.
One of the scariest things that I had to deal with was memory loss. Not just like I don't remember what I did last week, but like I forgot all the words to my own songs. I remember going to my primary care physician and he was like, "You are 100% healthy, there's nothing wrong with you." And my response was, "That's impossible, I'm dying."
I wasn't working, so I had all of these hospital bills. We had to move out of our home and move into my parents' basement.
I just wish I could have truly been present in those big moments, you know, when she took her first steps or, you know, her first day of preschool. Lyme is such a thief and it goes undetected because no one is looking for it.
For more information and prevention tips, go to projectlyme.org.
We're back. Thank you very much for joining us. It's a Tuesday. It's a Tuesday afternoon in Australia, or early evening, Victoria, New South Wales. What is the temperature? I've no idea. It's mild for this time of the year. Normally we have scorching temperatures right throughout the week, but it's pretty mild right now. But compared to the UK, we're having a heat wave. Not really, but you know, it would be like a heat wave to them. Anything over in the UK, anything over 2 is regarded as extremely hot, to say the least. Dr. Matt Shelton is a founding member of New Zealand Doctors Speaking Out with Science, NZDSOS, which challenges government silence on COVID policy. That's especially the many dangers of the genetic injections. We talked today to Matt about an important research paper he co-authored that identifies the strange spaghetti-like structures observed by embalmers following the rollout of the COVID injections. Matt, thank you for joining us.
It's a pleasure, Mike. How are you?
Very well, thank you. Just making sure everything's working. You know, usually at the start, if it's going to break down, it'll break down at the start, but we have it working. Before we get into yours, I just want to play you just a clip from Dr. Claire Craig, and we played it yesterday. No, actually, you know what? I will ignore that one. I want to go to Simone Gold. She's talking about clots, and I may play Claire later on, get your views on that. This is Dr. Simone Gold, and because we are talking about clots, if you can give me your opinion.
In their applications, in Moderna and Pfizer applications that they submitted to the SEC, Securities and Exchange Commission, they are classified, so the manufacturers classify them as genetic therapy. They create a little mRNA factory in your body. That mRNA factory produces spike protein. It definitely does not get shut off in some people, right? I don't know if 100% of people it's not getting shut off, or 2% of people it's not getting shut off, but definitely some percentage of people, that factory is going forever. There's people who took the shots 3 years ago who still have very high levels of spike protein. So the shot makes your body make spike protein. Spike proteins make clots. They do a lot of kind of bad things, but they make clots. And clots are typically the last thing that kills an organ or kills a person. So what is a stroke? A stroke is a clot to the blood vessels that go into your brain. A heart attack is a clot in the blood vessels that feed the heart. So you don't want to be building clots in your body.
So there's Dr. Simone Gold, and because we are talking about clots, I think they're called amyloid clots from COVID shots. Tell us your views on this, because scientific studies just published has for the first time characterised these structures commonly reported by embalmers worldwide as a strange rubbery white clot. And we were talking about them in the days of TNT, and many people said that we were the clot for talking about it, but it is very true, isn't it?
Oh, they're absolutely real. And when you've seen and stretched these things for yourself, there's no doubt it's about as in your face as you can get. We're not talking about tiny lipid nanoparticles or contaminant plasmid DNA, which may be there in the billions of molecules in a single dose of an injection, but it's easy to dismiss those because they're so impossibly small, and a lot of the processes that we're saying go on, can be too complicated, and it's easy to sort of push them aside. But when you see these bizarre-looking rubbery sort of white structures, as many embalmers have, and a few clinicians too along the way, it's much harder to push them away and deny their existence.
So tell me this. The authorities, what's their, because, and I'm trying to think of his name, I've just asked Jen if she could just tell me his name. We used to have an embalmer on, or a funeral guy, and he used to do all sorts of things to dead bodies, all legal, of course. He was saying then that there was that it was not normal. There were this stuff inside the deceased, and couldn't work out what it was. What's the authorities' reaction now to it? Have they pulled their head in, or are they still, as authorities do, the elite do, are they still digging their heels in?
Well, there's just silence, which seems...
That's it, silence.
All the different concerns.
We actually just dropped out then. Could you just repeat that if you wouldn't mind?
Sure. The response has been silence, which is a bit like what we've just experienced. So I don't know if you still got me. I'll keep talking anyway.
Yes, no.
There's been absolutely no acknowledgement at all. We wrote...
We've just lost him there. Hello, planet Earth. Let's go to this one here. It's incredible, isn't it? So I told you at the start, if it's going to break down, it will break down. And I'll just come back to melt. I'm melting down. Come back to Matt. Are you there, Matt?
Yeah, I'm still here, Mike.
Yes, we need to pedal faster.
Yeah, well, the response was what we just had, which was absolutely silent from the authorities. It's not like we're arguing about statistics or debating data. These are real physical structures. And we wrote to all of the Australasian colleges, most of them based in Australia, actually, the year before last, I think, and said, look, what are these? And of course, we got silence. And we suggested that they needed to start doing their own science and come up with some answers. So we just went on and basically did it ourselves. So we've largely answered a lot of our own questions and published last week on a preprint server a 3-part, the results of an investigation that's taken 2 years into exactly what these things seem to be made of. From that, we can start to postulate perhaps how they're formed. But as far as we know, it's the first sort of definitive structural analysis of what these things are.
What's the link between these clots and the COVID shot?
Well, that's the $20 trillion question, I'm guessing. What we set out to do in this study is to quantify what they are, and certainly we've shown that there's a very abnormal process that's triggered in response to it'll be a number of factors. We already know that because of the way that the cells that line the arteries largely are turned into production factories for this beast called the spike protein, those cells then become targeted for attack by the immune system. And in some cases, the holes in the cell membrane that form are very, very small. In other cases, they're larger. But essentially, something at an early point is distorting the body's natural inclination to form a clot to plug the hole. And then this whole process of a sort of polymeric, kind of uncontained, never-ending construction of these fibrous, very tough, elastic structures that essentially form a cast of the blood vessels in which they're propagating. And they can be very long. And we've all seen pictures, I hope, or probably of some of these things that are several feet long. And it's quite horrendous to think that these are growing in the body. But what we've been able to confirm, we think, pretty much absolutely, is that these things are not forming after death. There are some histological features which show that they are forming in conditions of laminar flow, of blood moving past in one direction. And by any analysis, these are not ever before recognized as forming with any other disease process. But then the body's never been subjected to a medical treatment like this, a genetic treatment that instructs the body to work in this particular way. So we think there is a link, but certainly the study we've just published in 3 parts on preprints.org is, at this stage, it's not about, definitively proving why they happen. That comes next, and there's already been quite a lot of good work done around that whole thing anyway. I have my own private views, and many of us do, and I think they're well informed. And as a long-time medical doctor, although I have to say, of course, I'm not able to work at the moment, but I can certainly put my knowledge of medical science and more recently sort of research skills to try and investigate this problem, because we've got to do something about it. We've got to acknowledge that it's happening, and to pretend that this isn't happening in the face of numerous embalmers now answering surveys. We know how extensive these things are, and it started in 2021. And we all know something else that started, and it's just the height of foolishness to pretend that there might not be a link, and to try and dismiss it without even bothering to acknowledge it or come up with an alternative explanation.
What about the health on the patient? And I sort of, to have these clots, I suppose, when ugly things in your blood, stroke would be imminent, wouldn't it? Wouldn't it be? It's going to happen. Because you need. Everyone's always concerned about your blood being thin enough so that it doesn't clot. If you are having these clots in it, surely stroke would be, or a heart attack, but probably stroke would be the major cause of death. And this is just from a person who's very interested in this sort of stuff.
Any sane, sensible person would look at these things and have to conclude that something catastrophic can happen. I guess the thing that surprised us is that many of the embalmers who have access to the medical histories of the patients who've died and that they are now embalming, there weren't necessarily any clues that something was happening. And the formation of these things will take time, and they seem to be forming and settling in the middle of a blood vessel, so there's still blood flow possible around the sides. And we know in other pathologies in life with normal wear and tear of arteries that gradually get thicker, that the body can adjust. You can get what's called collateral circulation, so other blood vessels opening up around the blockage. But putting that together with all the concerns there've been about the rise in overall all-cause mortality, we're all hearing more and more and reading about befuddling cases of younger people who suddenly die, suddenly have strokes, who who die in their sleep, or whatever. You can't stick your head in the sand and pretend that nothing is happening. And as long as no one else is trying to engage with the fact of this and produce an alternative explanation, then it is left to people like us to try and put the pieces of the jigsaw together and come up with an explanation that makes sense. And so from NZDSOS perspective, for instance, we feel like we've, for the last 4 years, had the playing field to ourselves. And that means that we may get some of our suppositions wrong, but nobody is coming in and showing why we're wrong about what we say, and what another explanation might be. So that in itself is probably the most suspicious and confirmatory factor that confirms that really bad things are happening, is the refusal of anybody to discuss this stuff with us or produce some sort of other hypothesis for what everybody is seeing.
It's very concerning because another report from Dr. Paul Marrick, he was reporting on a report that I think had a bunch of studies on those studies, and their own study also of 333 subjects, and that was done in South Korea. And it showed you that the number of cancers had risen, and there was, within 2 weeks of getting the shot, at times there was a cluster of cancers around of the entry point, which is really interesting. I don't understand why the medical authorities are still turning a blind eye to this information that's being released. If I wasn't so, I suppose, tempered, I would say there's a conspiracy going on. I mean, it's shock horror. Why would I ever think that? But surely, to goodness, I mean, when we had John O'Looney, he was the funeral guy and the embalmer from the UK, and he first brought it to our attention a couple of years ago. So it's not, people have been talking about it. You're providing the proof. Why aren't the authorities taking more note of this? Is there a conspiracy underway at the moment? Which we probably all would say yes. But surely, to goodness, you can keep hitting someone on the head and eventually you'll crack open the coconut.
Yeah, look, human nature is incredible in its ability to rationalize, to deny the bleeding obvious, to turn away, to be willfully blind. And I think, given how far this has gone, and how much was at stake for the reputations and the sort of social standing of all these decision makers at the beginning, it was probably almost inevitable that it was going to come this far, and it'll keep going this far until someone's able to stop it, or enough people are able to stop it. It's no longer a mystery to us. It's sad and tragic and frustrating, but it's no longer a surprise. And we certainly don't take it personally that no one's listening. They would probably say, well, this is the only option they have, is to pretend that it's not happening. They're the child who spilt the milk, and they just shut their eyes. And if they shut their eyes, it hasn't happened. And I think that's where a lot of these people are. Their backs are against the wall. In their heart of hearts, they know to some degree what's happening and what their part of it has been, and they're just ploughing on. Now, of course, probably we can only deal and try and engage with the people in our own countries who are local to us. But the lockstep similarities that we've seen in all the other countries that have proceeded in exactly the same way, tells us that there's clearly been some sort of playbook, and time will tell. And I think time is telling, and there's a torrent of stuff coming out that is proving to people actually how sinister and malevolent some sectors of humanity are, and what they've been able to get away with. And we would see this as part of just the same sad old sorry sort of part of human history. And at some stage we have to engage with that and work out how we spot people who are destined to be these sort of players, predators. And I think we've talked about this before. But in the meantime, we continue to just try and work out as best we can what the truth is, and just put it out there. And at some point, enough people will have had enough, or will see that the systems, or at least the people running the systems, are rotten to the core, and that we have to do something about it.
Yeah, it's the main ingredient, one of the, not the main ingredient, but the main moral ingredient here, an ethical ingredient, ethics. Now, this is the video from Dr. Claire Craig, and we did it yesterday, and it's only a short one. I'd like to get your opinion on that. As for the authorities, we wish to say they'll all be held accountable. They're not going to be, and the ones that are the greatest, in my opinion, humble opinion at that, the people that are tasked with looking after our health and our well-being and our future, government and the medical fraternity. If you were in a boat with them and you had to, one of you had to jump overboard in shark-infested waters, I mean, I would probably choose the sharks. At least I'd feel safer, and that's how terrible they are. I'll play Claire's video. Get your opinion on this, because the ethics. I'll play this first. Jess, we're back again. She disappeared, but she was
I've
talking.
Seen a little bit of it, Mike. I've seen a bit of it.
Okay,
I've seen a little bit.
Yeah, so she throws the hands up in the air, and she's very, very disappointed. What happened to ethics with the medical fraternity? I thought it was used to be regarded as lockstep, but no more.
That's probably the most, well, it was the earliest and the most sinister sign that we were in for a really rough ride, was the sudden dismantling of those ethical structures, and the thinly disguised sort of pharmaceutical marketing that everybody was subjected to, and the deception and the deceit. So even if nothing bad had happened, and even if the things had gone smoothly, and we hadn't been lied to, the fact that we were browbeaten into going along with the narrative, not discussing potential downsides, not acknowledging that this was an experiment and there was no safety data, and having to listen to our leaders saying that this new injection was safe in all stages of pregnancy, and that pregnant women should line up and get it, and that we needn't discuss the downside, and that doctors who tried to would be persecuted and could expect hell on earth for their trouble. That on its own, needs. I think there's been criminality. We have basic rights, including the right to life and the right to not be coerced into medical experimentation, not to be subject to cruel and unusual treatment, not to be tortured. And that's actually what's happened. Many of those rights have been breached, and that then I think puts us into the area of criminal law. But from a medical ethics perspective, that was all we ever needed to have avoided everything that's happened. If we'd respected those, if we'd truly been able to get the consents from our patients, having given them the information on the unknowns, and whatever negative information there was, and if we'd respected this golden rule that you never use anything in pregnancy unless it's absolutely necessary, and we knew before the rollout who the at-risk groups, if any, were from this COVID illness. So that remains probably the most glaring alarm signal that humanity is under attack, is the dismantling and the moving aside of the entire medical profession of most of the world, it would seem to me.
The doctors, the medical ethics, the ethics, first of all, do no harm. I mean, that's been quoted by 1 billion people now. Must be driving you nuts to hear it, but it's very true. How do we get the medical profession? I mean, it's like saying, how do you bring a horse to water? You can't make it drink. You're providing all the information. You're providing data along with others throughout the world, and we have the medical fraternity that sort of turn their nose up at it and become a little more important than they are and say it's all rubbish, and that the attacks on them were rubbish. And so the eroding trust in the medical fraternity it's like inverted commas climate change, which is not real, but the waves are bashing in against the sand, and the sand is disappearing. The sand being the ethics and the trust in the medical profession, and many, and you must drive you to despair also that many are going to the internet now to bypass going to the medical fraternity because they simply don't trust them. So how do we get back to the stage where the doctor didn't know everything, but the doctor did care about the patient and wasn't scared of being smacked and sent to the naughty corner or disbarred or whatever the case would be? How do we get back that trust, those ethics back into the medical profession?
It's actually very simple, and you have to go straight to the top. There are many doctors that are really unhappy about what's happened, to put it mildly, but they're scared, and they've kept quiet up to a point. So you have to deal with the medical regulators. So that's would be the Medical Council in New Zealand, APRA and the Australian Medical Council, etc. Over the ditch with you, because that's where these edicts have come from, and that's where the enabling of these fundamental and seismic changes in the relationship between the doctor and the patient have come from. But the background, of course, is this sort of creeping, sort of medical ethic Marxism, where the greater good has replaced what happens in the consultation room, privately between the doctor and the individual patient. And we've always said, look, if you protect that and you get that right in every case, then there's your common good, there's your public health benefits. But that's in the way often of this sort of socialist thinking, it's used as an excuse for a small group of people to gain considerable power. And there's the seduction of the idea of everybody having equivalent outcomes and it all being this sort of lovely utopia. But life doesn't work like that. And as soon as you remove that obligation that the doctor has always had to not just to serve the patients, but to protect them too, because you mentioned first do no harm, and it's never inappropriate to put that aside, because it means more than just be careful. It means that every single medical intervention, and mostly I'm talking about pharmaceuticals, in some way or other change the way the body works, so that they're the hope is that they do more good than harm, but they're interfering with body mechanisms, with biochemistry, and so you're always going to get a downside. So all medications are unavoidably unsafe by their very design, and that's also true of anything you inject directly into the bloodstream with an intention of changing something about how the immune system works. So all of this has been pushed aside under this sort of collectivist excuse that has come from the top. And we've learned a lot about the workings of our own medical council, for instance. And one of the problems we have is that the 4 lay members who are supposed to represent the public, but also be representative of the public, are all lawyers, and 3 or 4 of them are, they're heavy hitters. So our view is they were sort of brought in to kind of beef up the kind of the lawfare. Not just against us, but probably against the doctor members of the medical council as well, because I just simply cannot believe that a council of 12 good doctors and true, if that's what it was, would have allowed all this to happen without, political and kind of legal pressure being put on them as well. So I think that's where we need to go. We need to demand a shake-up and preferably a removal of everybody who's had everything to do with any of the key decisions. And of course, they answer to the minister, and ultimately the Minister of Health is responsible for what goes on in the Medical Council. So it's not hard to identify, where the power is and where the pressure points ought to be. The issue is how we go about that.
I don't know whether I feel depressed or just depressed. I'll work that out later. Tonight I will not be drinking. I'll be suicidal. But I feel very depressed, and I am, about the whole kit and caboodle. It's I still read in Murdoch's newspapers, he's an anti-vaxxer or something. It's like, oh, here we go again. And they can't wait for the Nipah virus to get going. That's another story. A great chatting to you, Matt. If somebody wants to find out more about NZDSOS and yourself, how do they do that?
Well, our website, NZDSOS.com. And look, as depressing as all this is to hear, and I totally get it, Mike, knowledge is power. And the more people that start to understand the deception that's been visited on people, the better. And you can't unlearn what you've learned. And people are waking up.
I wish that a hurry up. The alarm has been going off for a couple of years. Dr. Matt Shelton, thank you very much for your time. This is The World Today.
Surprisingly, the blueprint for transformation is woven into the United Nations Agenda 2030, ostensibly a vision for a better world.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I say again that taken together, the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and the Paris Climate Agreement provide humanity with a master plan for a sustainable way of life on this planet.
New York City, late September 2024, the setting for the United Nations Summit of the Future, a gathering of member nations to reinforce and accelerate Agenda 2030 and its 17 Sustainable Development Goals, or SDGs. The plan has a broad spectrum and is full of worthy ambition. But behind those deliberately bright and colourful boxes lies a darker theme, a shifting of influence and potentially power towards unelected world bodies. The strategy goes back well into the last century, and pressure is growing, because the goals are far behind targets set at the grand relaunching in 2015.
17 inspiring Sustainable Development Goals, the SDGs. Our aim is clear, our mission is possible, and our destination is in our sights.
To end poverty and hunger, address inequality, protect our planet, and build a life of dignity for all.
It appears to be a noble and ambitious programme for a perfect world. And who could argue with those aspirations? But critics insist the goals are not what they seem. Alex Newman is a journalist and broadcaster who's been investigating the issue for 15 years. He has his own way of interpreting the rhetoric.
You have to learn to speak what I call UNEs. You have to know what the terms mean if you want to truly understand what is being discussed. When they talk about peacekeeping forces or the peacekeeping role of the United Nations, they're actually talking about the war-making capabilities of the United Nations. So you have this Orwellian doublespeak. When they talk about transparency, more often than not, they're talking about eliminating your privacy. Human rights is another very, very good example. They make very clear in this document that your rights can be restricted under the guise of public order or morality or whatever the case may be. And so they're saying, here's your rights, but by the way, they're not really rights. We can revoke them at any time. The UN is filled with contradictions like this. Like, for example, when they talk about gender equality, right? A normal person in the Western world thinks gender equality means a woman has a right to earn money, to own property, to have all the rights and privileges that a man would have. When you look at the individuals who lead this movement within the UN, you're talking about radical feminists. You're talking about people who are very interested in dissolving the nuclear family. As you dig into these goals, it's very clear we're dealing with something far more nefarious. Once you look past the marketing slogans, the kind of warm and fuzzy, we're going to end hunger, which again is just window dressing, you realize that this is actually a blank check for totalitarian global control.
Author and campaigner, the late Rosa Koire, called out the plan more than a decade ago.
It is the biggest public relations scam in the history of the world. But it's far more than that. It's a blueprint. It is the action plan to inventory and control all land, all water, all minerals, all plants, all animals, all construction, all information, all energy, all means of production, and all human beings in the world.
Not the station for people who label truth as misinformation just because they don't like it.
For facts and truth.
Today's News Talk. The World Today.
And welcome back. It's a not a bad afternoon now on the Gold Coast, which we're headquartered. It's a place where lubra lips run free on the beach, and the intelligence has been washed out. Now, we have a few universities here. I was pulled up on that one. They said, "You're a very bad person." I said, "I am." So anyone going to heaven before me, please put in a good word. Won't do much good, but anyway. Robin Tilbrook is the leader and chairman of the English Democrats and chairman of the Workers of England Union. Welcoming again, Robin, to our microphone and camera. Robin, how are you?
Hello, mate. Nice to see you and nice to be on.
Yes, lovely. How's the guns going?
Well, my antiques wouldn't do much good against the agenda that you had on just a moment ago.
No, I think I
did have an idea for Matt, actually, that he was complaining about the lawyers on his professional ethics body, and we've got that right across the Western world, I think. But these are lawyers who will talk on and on about so-called international law. Mm. And that is a bit of a litmus test. If a lawyer is talking about international law, they are almost certainly a Fabian or a Marxist. They're not somebody who's genuinely talking about a functioning legal system. They're talking about an ideology.
Starmer's a Fabian, isn't he?
Yes.
Yep. Let me read this from Wikipedia. And you don't have to believe it, by the way, because they're a very left organisation, but I look at it a lot. Yeah. The English Democrats are described by Wikipedia as a far-right English nationalist party. Are you the people that the PM hates the most?
Well, we certainly like to be.
Are you succeeding?
He definitely does hate any idea of English nationalism, yes. But he's not alone in that. When William Hague was the leader of the so-called Conservative Party here, he said that English nationalism was the worst kind of all nationalism. Labour were then talking about the English being the people who are likely to come out with being violent and disrupting society and so on. And of course, that's almost exactly the opposite of what's really going on. Very often when you get politicians saying these type of things, they're projecting, aren't they, in the sense that they're the ones causing the trouble and they're trying to make out that somebody else is.
Incredible. Tell me about how the English Democrats came about. Was it you were out hunting pheasant, you had a few nice whiskies and you said, must do this? How did it come about? Or were you just outraged and you thought, time to put into motion not just words but some action?
So When Tony Blair was campaigning and then got elected, one of the key things he was saying was that he wanted to change the then British political structure, and he wanted to do that by creating Scottish Parliament, Welsh Parliament, and also something similar in Northern Ireland. And the Conservatives in that election had campaigned against that. They said that it was basically a threat to the UK. But he got elected, so he was proceeding with the agenda to create a Scottish Parliament, Welsh and Scottish governments. And I suppose at that time I simply thought, surely something like that should happen for England too, if they're going to have a Scottish Parliament and First Minister and government, then so should that happen for England. But what actually turned out to be the case is that both Labour and the Conservatives actually wanted to break England up into regions. These regions have no historic basis. They've got no social or cultural basis. There's really no sort of political support for it. In fact, on the one occasion when they've tried to get a 79% vote against. So it's of course ended up breaking up England, and I suppose where I've got to is if we're going to have either the UK or England broken up, but honestly, I'd rather have the UK broken up. I don't think the UK actually does very much for England, for the English, and it costs us an awful lot of money, and we get very little thanks for it. We get the bill and the blame.
What about the key principles of your party?
Yes, well, we are. Wikipedia's got it slightly right there. It's the Wikipedia entry for the English Democrats is written by a Welsh academic who's also a far left socialist, and he's very hostile to us. So it's certainly the case that he does us no favours there. But we are English nationalists, and a lot of our policies and ideas flow from that. So if we were talking about sustainable ideas, if we're using that term, we do want to keep England as green and pleasant a land as we can manage. We do want to control and reverse quite a lot of the mass immigration that we've had. We have not had governments looking after us or caring for us. We've had governments that are trying to undermine us and destroy the idea of England. In fact, one of the leaders of the establishment parties, Charles Kennedy, when he was leader of the Liberal Democrats, said he favoured regionalisation because regionalisation was calling into question the idea of England itself.
Incredible. Now, tell me, how do you achieve England's independence from the UK, and the rationale for this gets stronger day by day?
Well, our aim is to do it through democratic means and to win support for an independence referendum. But I think it's fair to say that the electoral system here in England is very difficult to make a breakthrough, and it also wildly disproportionately rewards certain levels of support. So, the Labour government, as it stands at the moment, has got what is described as a majority. The majority is only in the House of Commons, although they're engineering a majority in the House of Lords as well. But the fact is that it wasn't a majority of people that voted for them. Far from it. It was about 20% of the electorate that voted for them. And even that level of support has dropped dramatically since the election. So they're probably not supported by more than about 14% of the entire electorate. And yet we have a system which creates the sort of majority in the political system that allows the government to make major constitutional changes without any real check or balance.
What about other minor parties? If you wanted to push something through, could you call on their support, that they would support you? And I mean, I'm just thinking though, if you did what you would like to do, then you'd have to import whiskey, which would be a terrible thing. I mean, I'm not. You are a solicitor, so I would imagine you give it a bit of a nudge at times because you're a solicitor. That's what they do, and then you become a judge. You'll become an alcoholic before you know it. And then you have the Welsh. You'll have to pay to hear them sing. I mean, but to be serious though, are there other minor parties that could actually help you ramp this up a bit more?
Well, there are other parties that could.
Would they?
Part of the reason why the English Democrats have kept going now for, we launched in 2002. The reason why we kept going all this time is because there isn't actually any other party that's making a serious effort to campaign about the preservation of the English nation and of England.
Your policies, or the Democrats' policies, how different are they? Say, for example, heritage. How different are they from them? I mean, this is a lesson here for me. I'm learning about English politics.
Yeah, so the Heritage Party was founded by David Curtin. David Curtin was a UKIP member of the London Assembly, and after UKIP basically, it didn't exactly break up, but it lost a lot of its electoral support, and got overshadowed by the Brexit Party. When that happened, he wanted to sort of carry on in politics, and he set up the Heritage Party. I should say that there is an overlap between the sort of policies that he would talk about and that we talk about. He hasn't got a focus on England or on what happens to England. His focus is on the UK and on maintenance of the Union. And the same is true of, say, Advance or for that matter, Reform.
Yeah, David used to work for us at TNT Radio for about a year, then had an election to go to, and that was it. When we were going to bring him back, but then the evil twins decided to cast their evilness over us, and that never happened. But David's a very good guy and a very good broadcaster too. Yeah. Very principled and one of the best that I have worked with. So, David, if you're listening, still love you, mate. What about Reform? He's a good guy. I mean, you're a good guy too. But and I respect you probably more because of the weaponry behind you. and especially on a Friday night, I wouldn't want to walk past the window. There goes an Aussie. There's God on Aussie. What about Reform UK? How's your party? What's the relationship? Is there a relationship with Nigel, the celebrity game show host in waiting, or is it? Are you just sort of just watching to see how things go?
Mike, I think I've got to pedal back just slightly here, because one of the things that people have to understand, if they're trying to understand the way party politics is going in the UK, is that Blair changed the entire basis on which political parties exist from a legal point of view, because political parties here are now regulated by something called the Electoral Commission. You have to get registered with them. The Electoral Commission have allowed political parties that are simply commercial companies to be registered. And Reform UK is a limited company. And that limited company is wholly owned by another limited company, of which the directors are Nigel Farage and Zia Yusuf. So it isn't something where there's any sort of democratic political or power structure within the party. Whatever those two say is the policy for Reform UK Limited, that is the policy. So it isn't a situation where we could make an alliance with, say, a local part of the party. You know, if you were to go back before the Blair reforms or changes to the political system, the Conservative Party, for example, was basically a federation. It wasn't a unified structure. So you know, if you were dealing with the Conservative Party organisation in a local constituency, they decided who their candidate was, how they're going to proceed, what they were going to campaign on. They generally link that in with the central party. So, you know, I'm not saying there was a clash like that, but sometimes there was. So sometimes the central party wanted a particular candidate and the local party wanted their candidate, and the local party would always win.
Incredible. We're just sort of almost running out of time here. A couple of questions I'll try and get in. It's very expensive to run a political party, no matter whether you're in the US or whether you're in Australia, and no matter what size, it's still pretty expensive. How do minor parties attract the funding they need to make a difference?
You're absolutely right to ask that question, Mike. It is very difficult, and we've done our best, but of course it is. I think the lack of access to any serious money has been one of the main reasons why we haven't been able to make more progress than we have. We've regarded our role as at least partly campaigning about English, the English nation's rights, and so on. We have stood in many elections. We've used the electoral system to get leaflets delivered, and we have distributed well over 50 million leaflets in our time. Sometimes we've done quite well in elections. We did win the mayoralty of Doncaster at one time, and we have had our successes. But I think our principal success, quite honestly, is that there are a lot of people out there who feel strongly about England and England's future, and we've seen this recently. There's been a big surge in people putting up flags across England, and the flag that you most often see is the flag of England, the Cross of St George.
Yeah, we in Australia over summer, which is still summer, by the way. There's your somebody's phone's going off. I'll just there you are. It's so one of our guests has decided there's a fire. Not really, but it sounds like a fire alarm. But anyway, but I was just saying before we run out of time, and this is just tongue in cheek and being an Aussie, we did enjoy the English flag in Australia over summer with the cricket. And it means a lot to us to see that flag now. But I have to say though, the English supporters that came out, sure, they supported England, with the Barmy Army. There were 20 and 30,000 at a time. What they did though, they showed you that they do believe in England, not the UK, in England. And that, you would have watched a bit of the cricket. And you would have seen the Barmy Army going bazonkers, and they were very pro-England and very supportive of England. That would have made you feel quite good, wouldn't it?
Yes, I think you're right. We also had, not so long ago, a census in which what the state had done on the previous census was they'd asked whether people were identified as being English only, and that was high up on the list of options. And the result was that over 65% of people in England said they were English only, not British. And this time round, they buried that option right down at the bottom of the possible selection, almost at the bottom. And even so, more people said they were English only in response to that question than voted for Labour in the general election.
Very
so potentially, if we could galvanise that support into voting for an English party, and at the moment the English Democrats are that party, then we could be in government even under the current electoral system. But I do think that does require much more access to resource, basically.
And you would certainly make a point in Parliament with those muskets behind you, so nobody would disagree with you. Robert, if somebody wants to find out more about you and the English Democrats, because you are a regular here, and I should know this off by heart, but I always like the guest to be able to tell us.
Yes, thank you, Mike. So I'm on Twitter at Robin Tilbrook, and also the English Democrats are englishdemocrats.party.
Fantastic. Always a pleasure, Robin. We'll be talking to you again very soon, I would imagine. Robin Tilbrook there from the English Democrats. This is The World Today.
If you missed your favorite show or interview, visit episodes on our website at theworldtoday.news. Our live shows are also on X, Facebook, YouTube, Rumble, Kick, and Twitch. Now there really is no reason to miss out on anything on theworldtoday.news.
For The World Today, this is James O'Neill. A Russian drone strike hit a bus carrying mine workers near the Ukrainian city of Dnipro, killing 15 people and injuring at least 7, according to Ukrainian emergency services. The attack sparked a fire that was later extinguished. Ukraine's largest private energy firm said the bus belonged to one of its mines and called the strike a terrorist attack. The incident came as President Volodymyr Zelensky announced that peace talks involving Ukrainian, Russian, and U.S. delegations would take place February 4th and 5th in Abu Dhabi. Additional Russian drone strikes injured civilians elsewhere, including at a maternity hospital in Zaporizhia, despite a temporary pause in attacks on Kyiv. Former Russian President Dmitry Medvedev said Russia is not interested in a global conflict, but warned that the risk of world war remains high. Speaking to TASS, the deputy head of Russia's Security Council said Moscow has repeatedly warned NATO against further expansion and Ukraine's membership, arguing Western refusal to negotiate led to the Ukraine conflict. While welcoming renewed U.S.-Russia contacts, Medvedev said a global conflict cannot be ruled out, citing declining restraint among major powers. He also warned that the expiration of the New START treaty on February 5th would further erode trust and increase nuclear risks. The United States is not prepared to launch strikes on Iran because it needs to deploy additional air defenses to protect U.S. forces and regional allies from possible retaliation, the Wall Street Journal reported. While Washington has sent a large naval force, including the USS Abraham Lincoln, officials said strikes are not imminent. The Pentagon is moving Patriot and THAAD air defense systems to bases across the Middle East. Iran's Supreme Leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei warned that any U.S. attack would trigger a regional war. President Trump dismissed the warnings, but said diplomacy remained possible. Iranian and Russian officials also indicated that negotiations between Washington and Tehran may still be progressing. China's communist regime has given its first official response to the removal of 2 top generals, framing the move as part of an anti-corruption drive. A spokeswoman for the Taiwan Affairs Office said the purge showed the party's zero tolerance for corruption, but avoided specifics. Analysts say the vague response and official silence suggest deep internal power struggles and weakening military cohesion. References to the ousted generals were later scrubbed from official transcripts. Experts argue corruption as a pretext for political infighting, leaving major leadership vacancies and raising concerns about command effectiveness and regional security, particularly regarding Taiwan. India has allocated a record $85 billion for defense in its 2026-27 budget, a 15% increase following clashes with Pakistan in May of 2025. Finance Minister Sitharaman said the spending would strengthen military capabilities, with $23 billion set aside for capital expenditures. Defense officials said modernization is a priority after missile-heavy fighting highlighted the need for long-range strike capacity. Funds are expected to support purchases of fighter jets, naval vessels, drones, and missile systems. Leader of the opposition party, Kevin Badenoch, raised the pressure on Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer during PMQs.
To collaborate more with our long-standing ally, Japan. But let's turn to China. Of course, Britain should engage with China, even though the Chancellor wasn't allowed to go, even though they are an authoritarian state who seek to undermine our interests, even though they spy on us, sometimes within the walls of this building, even though they fund regimes around the world hostile to our country, they are a fact of life, a global power, and an economic reality. So let me be clear. It is not the Prime Minister engaging with China that we take issue with. What we are criticising is his supine and short-termist approach.
We'll be back with another news break at the top of the next hour. This has been James O'Neill for The World Today.
Hi, my name's Michelle Tankey and I'm the volunteer manager at the Lost Dogs Home. We've got 145 incredible volunteers that help us with a wide range of activities, including helping out in the laundry, taking dogs for a walk, doing activities with our enrichment program, administration, gardening, you name it, they're helping us around the shelter. Whether it's blowing bubbles to entertain kittens waiting for adoptions or even taking a dog for a walk, it's such an incredible positive impact on the animals. Volunteers are so important and special to this shelter because they support us in caring for thousands of animals each year. The impact they have enables us to do far more for the animals than we would be able to. For example, we can get on top of the huge amount of laundry we have. So the volunteers allow us to clean thousands more blankets than we could. It's incredible the amount of gifts that we're given by the public. We're so grateful for it. So if we get some toys, we can give them directly to puppies straight away to play with. Or towels, we can take them to our vet hospital for them to use immediately. So it's a really important job to help staff with. I would say to someone who's interested in volunteering to please get in touch. We would love to hear from you. We have an application form on our website that you can fill in, so please just detail all your skills and experience you can offer the shelter, and we'll be in touch when a suitable role comes up.
People might tell you that Lyme doesn't kill people, but we are losing people. People disappear from their lives.
One of the scariest things that I had to deal with was memory loss. Not just like I don't remember what I did last week, but like I forgot all the words to my own songs. I remember going to my primary care physician and he was like, "You are 100% healthy, there's nothing wrong with you." And my response was, "That's impossible, I'm dying."
I wasn't working. I had all of these hospital bills. We had to move out of our home and move into my parents' basement.
I just wish I could have truly been present in those big moments, you know, when she took her first steps or, you know, her first day of preschool. Lyme is such a thief and it goes undetected because no one is looking for it.
For more information and prevention tips, go to projectlyme.org.
With your help, we can continue to fight for freedom, reach new audiences, and bring important information to the public free of charge. This is not possible without your generosity. Join our quest for the truth and our freedom and donate today, telling it as it is. This is today's News Talk, The World Today.
And welcome to the Protagonists. Nice to have your company. I've got a couple of great guests. One, I'm very excited. I've followed her for a while, and thank you very much for your kindness coming on to us. In the next 2 years, Oxford will become the first WEF planned official 15-minute city, and they can't wait. Oxford started the conversion project several years ago. Now, Oxford is installing digital AI car surveillance, we'll get you, congestion zones and one-way routes blocking off roads and designated zones. Now, residents of Oxford have to apply for for a permit to drive their car freely around their own city. What's odd with that? Citizens will only get 100 permits per year to leave their zone. This number will come down next year to fight, of course, wait for it, climate change. We're going to freeze, boil, or maybe just live life normally. Unless you believe in climate change, and then you're preparing for the worst in 400 million years' time. Glasgow Council approved plans for it to become a 15-minute city in Scotland. And there are other councils involved in this worldwide trend, such as Melbourne in Australia, one of the C40 cities heavily supported by various governments, such as the UK government, George Soros, magnificent person he is, open societies, Google, Bloomberg, big infrastructure, and of course consulting firms. Now, need I say more? They have us all ready to do what they want to do. And they're doing it for the love of humanity, not for money. So don't ever think they are. Well, maybe they are. Now, the authorities, because they're sick of this scuttlebutt, they're fighting back against conspiracy theorists like, for example, Katie Hopkins, and I'll play her stuff in a second. In The Big Issue, we read, some people online have claimed that in 15-minute cities, leaving home or driving in general will only be possible with express permission from local authorities. But there is no evidence to support this. Local authorities have been at pains to make clear that residents will be able to travel freely throughout the city by walking, cycling, piggybacking, or taking public transport when it works. And the policies instead seek to reduce reliance on driving, basic freedoms for basic needs. Now, Stephen Edwards, Chief Executive at Living Streets, that's what it's called, a charity aiming to achieve a better walking environment for everyone, told The Big Issue. Creating safe, accessible and well-connected places will enable more of us to choose to walk or wheel our everyday journeys. We could all have a shopping trolley each. Well, you can't have those, you're stealing them. So you got to have your own little trolley, like Grandma used to have, you know, the long thing, and had the top, you flip it open. It's fantastic. And you put your cat in there even. You put your family there, they were big enough. Anyway, these everyday journeys are helping to boost your health, support local businesses, and connect us to our local communities. And let's face it, it's not far to go. You're in within 15 minutes from one side to the other side. Oxford City Council statement also said, no resident will ever go hungry. No, I made that part up. It said, no resident would need permission to travel across the city. Under the traffic filters, residents will still be able to drive to every part of the city at any time. But in the future, at the times when the filters are operating, you may need to take a different route. For example, a really long route. I'll see you there in 3 weeks. If you want to travel by car, in fact, if you're traveling by car, you need to have your holy water and drink that because you are a sinner. Exemptions to fines will be provided to carers, blue badge holders, businesses, emergency services, and I would imagine the elite. Under the trial, only 6 roads in Oxford are proposed to have traffic filters, while many other roads will continue to be accessible to drivers at any time of the day throughout the year. Those who wish to drive elsewhere for their daily shop, to visit a friend, will be able to. And you can do that, every 20 or 30 years once. Before we get into our panel, I just want to play this clip here from Katie Hopkins, former TNT presenter, and as my grandma would say, a beaut person. This is Katie.
15 minutes of freedom here in the UK. So let me tell you the plan. The plan is in Oxford, and this has just been passed by the council, to divide the city here into, a bit of a squiggly city, into 6 parts. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And you will only have the freedom to operate in the part that you live. So if this is you, the idea is that everybody will live within 15 minutes of the things they need. 15 minutes of a school, 15 minutes of a doctor's, 15 minutes of a supermarket. And if you want to travel to the other zones in your city, or maybe soon your town, you will have to go out an approved route. You will have to journey around the outside of the city in order to re-enter another section of the city. This plan is supposed to be saving the planet. And the idea is that you won't simply be able to cross over into other sections of your city anymore. So if your mother, for example, lived over here, you wouldn't be able to just go across and see her. This would all be done via e-gates, electronic gates, and number plate recognition. You in your area will only be allowed within that 15-minute zone that you've been allocated. The number plate recognition will know if you leave your zone. And you can apply for permission, a permit to leave your zone and travel to another zone. But you'll only be allowed to do this about 100 times a year. This is real. I just have to stop and say that. This has actually been passed by Oxford Council. This is happening in the next 2 years, 2024 it begins. And if you use up all your 100 passes that someone designates whether you're allowed to have to go into the different zones, you'll be fined. Your number plate will be recognised. It will observe that you've gone somewhere you're not allowed in your own city, and it will fine you £100 or £80 or whatever the fine number is.
I've just gone to a thing, it hasn't worked. There we are. My guest, by the way, Sandy Evans, independent researcher and writer, and Ben Fisher is a Canterbury campaigner against the 15-minute city. We did have another gentleman, but he thought it was in the evening, so he's having a big sleep in. What are you doing calling me? Anyway, Sandy, thanks for joining us. I'm a big fan of yours, and I'm very appreciative that you've come on to the Protagonists with the world today. Thank you. We probably should turn the microphone on. That's, that little button that says, turn me on. And there. How are we doing? No? So what I might do is just quickly go to, as we get that sorted out, it's called a technical hitch. That's what we do in the business. Ben Fisher, thank you for joining us. How alarmed, by the way, are you of what we're seeing at the moment?
Yes, good morning, Mike. I think very alarmed. The concern at the moment, and it fits in really with everything that we're seeing that's happening around the world at the moment, is really a push to increase the level of authoritarianism, I suppose, among local residents. One of the big concerns for me at the moment is we have local government authorities across the country, certainly in Kent, in the county that I live in, which is home to the city of Canterbury, constantly screaming about underfunding and service pressures and can't provide for the residents. Yet there's a continued plan to carry out these vanity projects that are talking about 15-minute cities where we can walk to the amenities we need. In a city like Canterbury, it's a complete waste of time. Most residents can walk to a Fenwick department store where you can buy designer goods already within 15 minutes. The schools are local in a city like Canterbury. You have stores on every corner. We've already got 15-minute cities. It's very accessible. I sense that there's something a lot more sinister about a lot of these projects, and I get the feeling that it's much more about control than it is, increasing convenience and quality of life for local residents.
And now we're back. Sandy, hello, Earth. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you. Yeah.
Thank you. As I said before, I'm a great fan of yours, and I'm very appreciative of your time because your word is it's valued by many millions of people around the UK. So thank you. What's your views on this terrible? It's just dreadful. This thing they want to bring out called this 15-minute city. Do they want to destroy the city?
Well, really, this is a part of a much bigger plan, and it's actually been quite a long term plan. There's the whole 15-minute city idea came out of the C40 cities, which is a much bigger global operation. And I'd encourage anyone just to Google C40 cities and see what that really means, because they've put together this plan also of governance with what I call is the smart city mayors. They're actually called the mayors for the global mayors for climate and energy, and they're trying to bring in these global mayors under devolution in the UK. So this is all part of a much bigger thing that will be coming in later. And the C40 cities are really behind the 15-minute city rollout. And they used, obviously, I think it was Canterbury, Oxford and Cambridge as test beds for this. And of course, now Oxford, they're now embedding that deeper along with other cities in the UK. And I think eventually that they'll really want to engage this whole 15-minute city ideology fully. Now, the C40 cities is a global network of 100 countries who are going to adhere to the 15-minute city rollout. So they've managed to put this all through, and it started in, I think it started in 1999 with Ken Livingstone, but then it kind of became a thing in 2004 with Boris Johnson, Michael Bloomberg, who was the mayor of New York, and Carlos Moreno, and they really pushed this to go through. And it's all under the guise of climate change, which we know is it's not really about environmentalism. We know that it's more about control, because if it was benign, why would there be so many penalties and restrictions for the people in these areas? And we know that it is there to as a system of control. You know, you've got all the surveillance went in, and what's interesting is all this came in really straight after the lockdown, and we know that the lockdown was a vector to accelerate Agenda 2030. It always was. I mean, the strategic framework partnership meeting in the UN they had in 2019 was accelerated, and of course they used COVID to accelerate the whole thing. So we've got this global control thing behind what they are calling as a grassroots green movement, and it's not true.
It's very scary because this shows you the power of the WEF, and it also shows you the power of the stuff they're smoking. Because I mean, otherwise, how would we get to this stage? Now, Ben, I mean, because, by the way, Ben is a Canterbury resident, long-term local campaigner who has campaigned on national topics such as Brexit and on local topics such as the 15-minute cities. He's a keen advocate for freedom and less state interference in private lives, also specialises in the safe adoption of new technology and artificial intelligence in local government, and very interested and very concerned about his local area in Canterbury. Ben, how can we turn it back? How can we turn all this back? How can you bring the local community? Because what it's going to do is just decimate the local community.
Absolutely terrible for businesses. So the County of Kent is not a place where public transportation is easily accessible for a start. It's just not. People rely on their cars. They're very important. It's the only method that they can get to and from their workplaces. Local businesses that are based in towns such as Canterbury and the local other towns in the area are reliant on people being able to easily access their business. So these proposals, which as Sandy rightly mentioned, are being claimed to be grassroots. I was born in Canterbury. I've grown up in this area. I don't know anybody that's jumping up and down to demand that we segregate our city into multiple different areas and then restrict access. Now, Canterbury's always had a problem, due to its historic architecture. It was a Roman-built city. It's very old. It has a ring road around the centre, which is constantly clogged. Has been since I've been a child. The council have invested into park and ride services. Back from I recall from the 90s. So Canterbury's always had a problem with traffic. But like I say, I think a lot of these new proposals are actually slightly more sinister. If they were really concerned about the environment, they would have invested into our roads infrastructure to remove the traffic from the towns north of Canterbury and from the Isle of Thanet that need to use Canterbury to get through to other parts of Kent. There's been no investment into ring roads to alleviate that non-local traffic. So all of the traffic has to go into the city centre, and if you look on a map, you can see pretty much daily on things like Google Maps, the city centre is red. So I think I think some of the concerns will be heard by residents, but ultimately, unless they're going to actually invest into our local infrastructure, which they don't, then we're always going to have traffic problems because people that don't even live in Canterbury have to use Canterbury's road network to get to other towns and locations in the county. And now to top all of this off, if we've got such a problem, and architecturally, yes, Canterbury is a problem, then why are the authorities thinking that it's acceptable to build thousands upon thousands of new properties in and around the city and the other local towns in the area? And we're not just talking, a few thousand homes. Some of the local towns in the area are almost doubling their population. So the impact on our road network and the impact on people's lives, we're already feeling it. You can't get up the M2, which is the motorway towards London, without getting stuck in a traffic jam. Every single morning, it's now crammed. There's no infrastructure investment. There's no interest in infrastructure investment. And when you've got a number of vehicles sitting idle in either a city or on a motorway with the engines running, of course they're polluting. So the logical step for me, if they were really concerned about the climate and really wanted to improve people's quality of life, they would make it much easier for Kent residents to get from A to B, and they would do so where the road network's functioning efficiently, so that when a vehicle engine's running, they're able to get from A to B quickly and efficiently, not sitting there in traffic, polluting the environment because the local authorities just refuse to invest into local infrastructure. And instead, like you say, they come out with these ludicrous, they don't even come out with these ludicrous ideas because we've completely outsourced local innovation to organisations such as the UN and the WEF. I'm really not too sure what we're even paying them for. We might as well just close it down because, it seems to be just a mouthpiece for other global organisations and their own ideas.
Having said that, you've just upset the Australian Prime Minister, the UK Prime Minister, and all the others, because they're all part of it. I mean, they're all lockstep at the moment, which is very scary. I mean, and Sandy, I see that Starmer is moving at breakneck speed. I mean, I just heard, I flicked on the radio this morning, and they were talking about Starmer now wants, he says, the English countryside is far too white, and we have to fix this. But is Starmer taking the UK on this fast, a long walk on a short pier? So, off you go, and before you know it, you've fallen over the edge and you've drowned. I mean, and he seems to be doing that. How can you stop it? How can you stop this rubbish?
Well, I think really local action is possibly the only way you can stop it. And I found that, thanks to people like Ben, you've got local people taking local action and challenging their town councils. And, there's various means. I've been talking this week to people in Merseyside who set up a residents association. And that sounds very boring, but actually there's massive power in people getting together collectively and challenging their councils, not as individuals, but as a body of people. And these residents associations, or call it what you like, is people getting together and challenging the council in a group and really doing their homework and seeing that there are means to challenge particularly things that have not gone through due process in the consultation phase. And you can use various things like that. There's something called the gunning principles, which are all about the failure of consultation processes. And actually in West Dulwich in London, they overturned a low traffic neighbourhood, which is a form of smart city, a form of 15-minute city, but much smaller, because it hadn't gone through the consultation process properly. So they overturned it, and actually Lambeth Council had to pay back all their court fees and take away all the infrastructure, all the surveillance cameras, all the notices of don't go here, don't go there. All of it had to come down. And I think, if people knew this, if they knew the power of people getting together and challenging what has happened, I think, all of this could be overturned, I believe, with something called the gunning principles. And do look them up. They've been a precedent has been done for LTN. So yeah, I think power to the people. We need to challenge this, and that's the only way. Because it's been brought from global to local. The only way to fight it is locally at the moment. Yeah.
I just see and you're right. Power to the people. The Australia, for example, the term is, how did that happen? I didn't see that happening. And the power of the people, it's very powerful once it's done. So how do you, Ben, how do you create that awareness before it's done? Because to look back in hindsight is not terribly wise, because then to undo it becomes quite, it could almost become quite futile. Especially if you have people like
and costly as well, costly to the taxpayer.
Yeah.
So it's as Sandy rightly mentioned. Actually, it's the council having to pay back. Well, actually, it's the taxpayer losing out again, having to basically pay for poor decisions that are being made by local authorities again that outsource all of their innovation to global bodies. How we go about this, I think one of the things that people like me who sit, on the centre right and sit on the side of freedom really need to start doing better at getting in touch with local residents through the channels that they're used to. One of the things that I guess you said the globalists are very, very good at is running their things like social media campaigns and investing lots and lots of money into their communications platforms. I haven't got the figures to me, but the mayor like Sadiq Khan has got hundreds of communication officers to push his views and agenda. And quite typically, I think that politicians and people that are that sit to the right of that haven't connected with local residents to explain and share these issues as effectively as we could have done. I think bringing people together, local pub meets, all of the types of things that we've done in Brexit are probably going to be very, very important in the coming years to pushing back against such authoritarian measures that seem to be creeping into our once free societies.
What do you think, Sandy? By the way, both of you can just pop in when you want to. If the light bulb flashes, don't sit there and wait for me to turn it on or off. Just go for it. But what's your thoughts, Sandy?
Well, I agree with Ben. You see, no one is coming to save us. What we have to realise that is actually down to us. And so many people are still not particularly aware, and it's awareness campaigns. And actually, programs like this is really good that they, that can go worldwide. So the thing is that we're being attacked on all fronts. It really is an attack on us in all sorts of ways, and we're fighting all sorts of problems. 15-minute cities is a big one. We've got data centres going up all over the place. We've got wind farms, solar farms taking up all our farmland. So we're battling things on a daily basis with different groups, and it's keeping that engagement, because if people understood, we are an island, and all these things that they're implementing could have devastating effect, particularly, for instance, the C40 cities, which is all what 15-minute cities is came out of. They've even got a planetary diet, which is taking us right back to almost rationing under climate change. And all this is done, and it's not about, as we know, it's not about environmentalism. It's about top-down global governance and technocratic control. And this is what we have to really, and people think, oh, that's a conspiracy theory, but it's all there in all the documents. In the C40 cities document, you can see the planetary diet and what that really means for people. And it's taking you back to wartime rationing, basically. And we are an island. They're also trying to stop the imports and exports. So, what are we going to do? We have to fight. We have to galvanise people.
Yeah, and we often talk about that, but really, we don't do much of it. I mean, although the UK is sort of leading the way for the rest of the world at the moment for the good fight. If you look at the US, it's a fight that's been paid for by Soros and other countries such as China and whatever. But the UK, they have that good fight at the moment, not always entirely right for the fight, but they're fighting for the country. The problem, as I see, Sandy, is that the fight needs to be greater, because we all go on about Starmer and the administration at the moment, and we all say how terrible they are and they're awful. I have this horrible fear that unless we get a really good fight, a big fight, and keep going and going and going, the fear I have is that, and Australia is quite recognised at times for that, it's apathy. And people just, I mean, your voting is, you don't have to turn up, we have to turn up. So on a day that you think, or the media has said that Starmer's finished, he's gone, well, people go, I'll just stay home. You know, he's going to go. He could very well not go. And and even though he's doing terrible things to the UK, he could very well, or his government could very well be the rollover to the next administration for the next 5 or 6 years. And that's very, very scary, because that good fight, it can't stop. It has to get stronger and stronger and stronger. And that's the point I'm making before. I mean, what do we really do? Ben, I mean, you're a young guy. Is there the fire in the belly, not just to have a good fight, but to have a great, good war, to get through this, so many fights, to change the injustices that Starmer is incurring upon the UK?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think Starmer's government has actually been quite an awakening to a lot of residents across the country. We ended up with a Starmer government because we have a first past the post system, like quite like Australia. We have a very similar political system, and in the last election we see big splits between the Reform Party and the Conservative Party. But if you collectively add that right-wing vote together, Starmer wasn't popular in the election, and he's not popular now. Nobody's calling for any of these measures to take place, but ultimately he's living his dream, isn't he? He's just returned from China, where these kind of things are commonplace. Cameras on every street corner, citizens being tracked about their every single move. There seems to be no care for our historic those historic freedoms that we've taken for granted. And I think you're absolutely right. I think we need to do a hell of a lot more to communicate that to our local residents and actually create that push. I think a lot of people just want an easy life. They're happy to get up, go to work, and contribute to the economy, come home, see their families, and live a free, comfortable life. They don't necessarily, they don't want constant political battles. I think really we definitely need to come together. We've got to get the Labour government out in the next election, and whether that means the Conservatives and the Reform Party need to work together to do so. I think it's absolute of paramount importance that they do, because, like you say, another 5 years of the Starmer government could be absolutely devastating for the country and also our economy.
Just what also there's not a whole lot of transparency here. They say there is, but we're not seeing a whole lot. And the C40 cities, they're very, very profitable. If you forget all the other stuff, just look at the data centres they're building around the world. They are very profitable, expensive to build. Governments love it because private industry is spending a lot of money. But the damage they do also, water, energy, communities, it does terrible things to the communities and stuff. That is the downside, but you have these very wealthy, rich individuals or companies, and the same thing with the C40 cities. I mean, if it was just in the UK, you think, oh, maybe it's just government gone a bit nutso, but it's global. It's 80 cities around 80 countries around the world. Sandy, what's at play here? I mean, sure, it's we often say the WEF. To me, it looks a little more than the WEF. That's to me a nice facade that's covering what really is happening behind the scenes.
Yeah. Well, I've been on this for decades actually, and my research began with Agenda 21, which was brought about really at the Earth Summit in 1992 in Rio de Janeiro, where 178 countries signed up for sustainable development, for Agenda 21 sustainable development, and they created 8 goals to be executed by I think it was 2000, and they called them the 8 Millennium Goals, and that was all about climate change. And so they got the whole world to sign up to save the planet, ostensibly, but actually what they signed up, unfortunately, was global control. They didn't know it at the time. It was 1992, and it was all about saving the planet. And so this is where it's come from. And then, of course, the goals, those 8 goals, didn't really get achieved by 2000. So then they accelerated it by bringing in the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, and that was, it was launched in Rome in 2015 with Barack Obama coming, and the Pope endorsed it, and it was all about saving the planet. And we had these 17 goals to be achieved by 2030. So that's what they ostensibly were doing. But behind this, you've got the Club of Rome and the UN. This was all launched by the UN, by the way. The Sustainable Development Goals is a UN based project, and this has really come from something called the Club of Rome, and we know what the Club of Rome is all about. They meet in secret, and they've got this agenda, and a very long-term agenda, and they even said in I think it was one of the Club of Rome reports in 1991, just before the Earth Summit, they said we need something to unite humanity against a common threat in order to bring in this control. And that was on, I think it was page 115 of the First Global Revolution. Do look it up. But it's how they concocted climate change as a way to unite people against a common threat and make the people the enemy, and that we, the people, are the enemy of this whole climate change thing. We're made to feel guilty, and it's this whole guilt thing, and people have bought into it. And if people realised it was the biggest lie that's ever been perpetrated on humanity, they wouldn't go along with it. So it is a deeper agenda.
Sandy, I'm just thinking though, when we look at Starmer and what's happening, and look at around the world what's happening. I mean, countries have been deserted by their administration or government. And I mean, look at the UK. You have Starmer at the moment, and he did his big jaunt to China, and look at the Chagos Islands, and you look at what's happening to your culture within the UK, how it's changing. You look at the 2-tier justice system at the moment in the UK. Even look at your media. Some really very, very strong local media has gone very, for example, towards the Chinese. And so they forget their base. They look at the government's forgetting its base. Its base are the people that voted, or that 20% of people that voted them into power. But they also have to look after the other 80%. So we see that countries around the world, the governments are deserting them and going to other areas, such as, as said in the UK, Starmer is very, very much trashing your culture, your history. The justice system is a joke. There are cover-ups all over the place, and as I said, your local media is fast becoming a disgrace, because they, instead of talking about issues that concern that particular audience, they don't do that, and so forth. Why this switch? This is for Sandy, but why this switch, Sandy, away from what was the culture of the UK? It was always did the right thing. You looked after your fellow man. You always did the right thing. You had morals, and you had the moral compass. And it seems to have all changed. Why would that be?
I think there's a number of reasons, and I think we have to. I mean, we've talked a lot about Starmer today. We have to remember that it doesn't matter who is actually running the country. It would be the same, because this is a global agenda, and it doesn't matter whether they're Conservative, Labour, Lib Dem, or I believe anything else, to be honest. I really wish I had more faith in party politics. I don't, because it's all being driven by a $1 trillion business, which is actually the climate change and carbon business. You know, we've got impact investing, all linked up with the blockchain. There's trillions invested in greenwashing, and unfortunately, most politicians can be bought. And I really I despair actually that there could be a party political, a party that could actually bring us out of this and be honest. And you're right, we don't have these moral values anymore. We've become increasingly secular without any moral compass, which I think is a big problem. And everybody can be bought. And I think we need to really get back to traditional values. And if we could, that would be great. But I think really the people are really the only ones that can bring us out of this. I do believe that most politicians can be bought and are bought, because if you look at the whole thing with Rishi Sunak and how invested he was in all the lockdown, the things that we had during lockdown, all the masks and all the stuff that went along with the whole medical lockdown, all these politicians had money in everything, in all the vaccines as well. So how can we battle that one when people can be bought, politicians can be bought so easily, and they're all dancing to the tune of the United Nations and the WEF and effectively the Club of Rome. Yeah.
Ben, what's your views?
Yeah, no, I sympathise with what Sandy's saying, and I think the interesting thing is if you look at a country like the United Kingdom, we've had a real push to improve the air quality of our cities. You know, nobody wants to have a school next to a busy road and lots of diesel engines. Their kids breathing in. Sure, makes it's common sense, but it's what's really concerning is when you look at the global figures, we're 1% of the world's CO2 emissions. We could literally sink into the sea and we wouldn't change. We'd have no impact on this climate change or global warming or whatever they want to call it this week whatsoever. We are a small island of around 70 million people. Meanwhile, we're bankrupting ourselves, purchasing windmills, solar panels, from an authoritarian dictatorship that's opening a coal-fired power plant every other week. It's complete economic suicide, and I think it really is becoming a bit of an issue where people's actual lives are being affected by these ludicrous policies. We've got some of the most expensive energy costs in the world in the UK. It costs an absolute fortune to heat your home. Now they keep talking about climate change. More elderly people die in the winter from cold temperatures in the UK than they do in the summer. I'm not bothered about a few days during the summer where we're nearing 40 degrees. In fact, neither does anybody I know. They're happy to fly off to Spain and sit by a pool on a sun lounger and enjoy 40-degree weather. Everybody that I've spoken to enjoyed a little bit of sunshine. What they're more concerned about is the energy costs that we're having to pay out for just to keep our houses warm in the winter. And when you're looking at temperatures down to -5, -10 in some parts of the country, like we've had earlier in January, and fuel costs are at an all-time high, we've got people who can't afford to heat their homes. And this is all because of some ludicrous dream that's being peddled by, like Sandy says, what appears to be bought-out politicians who don't seem to care for the residents of this country, but seem to care more for whoever their donors are. Or even, if you look at the migration crisis, it seems to be just the rest of the world.
Do you start nicking cameras like you did with Julius? I mean, it's. I won't ask you this because you may get a hello at the door, but do you have a pile of cameras in your wardrobe? I mean, I'm not that I'm saying that you would ever do that, but maybe there's a point there that, here's a very ground roots sort of way of doing something. Nick all the cameras, make it so hard for them, although the ratepayers are going to pay for it, but at least you're making a statement and it will show you that it doesn't work. Do you nick the bollards? I mean, they're pretty
I think the problem there actually is, yes, we've got cameras for now, but if you look at the Labour Party's policy at the moment, they want to ban all petrol and diesel cars by 2030. Now, if you've ever stepped in a show, if you've stepped in a showroom in the last few years, you'll know that all of the new vehicles are basically internet connected computers on wheels. So I've had a career in IT. I actually suspect that they won't need cameras eventually because the vehicles themselves are all geolocated. They're all connected to the internet. And actually, you'll probably just find they'll be able to control people's movements through things like that. So cutting down cameras and things like that might not be an effective means of protest, when I think now we're entering a world where these actors actually have a few different options to be able to control. Like I say, cars are all connected, our devices are connected. So yeah, I think bollards and cameras are one thing, but if you've got the software installed on cars to be able to manage where people can travel, and like I say, the government is pushing to ban those petrol and diesel engines by 2030, which means all new cars are going to have a SIM card in them. Then at that point, what do we do then? I think the camera issue is a temporary thing, and I think as soon as the technology is available, they will move to something new.
Unfortunately, they need chips and RAM, and at the moment, with all the data centers, you can't get RAM at the moment. You can't get any memory. If you haven't got that, you ain't got a car. And you are right. The new EVs are just basically a battery and a bunch of computers doing their bit. What could possibly go wrong? And the second thing, Sandy, I mean, the government's got no right. I mean, first of all, if you look at an EV, the first 8 years of the EV, at the end of it, you've got to replace the battery, so there's an extra 30 or 40,000. But what it does to the environment is actually it goes into the positives after 8 years. Compared to a petrol or a diesel car or vehicle. And then imagine having trucks as EVs, these great massive semi-trailers as EVs. Imagine Jeremy Clarkson having an EV tractor. I mean, and the farmers. I mean, it's just not going to work. I don't think it'll work. What do you think?
Well, there is a massive problem with EVs, and none of this stuff makes any economic or practical sense.
No,
and that's what we have to remember, is that there must be an agenda of control about it, because none of it makes economic, as I said, sense. And what we've got to remember is that these EV batteries are, that they have to have. They're quite dangerous, as we know that we've had problems with the EV bicycles bursting into flames, and actually the EV batteries do burst into flames, and a lot of ferries won't insure you to actually take an EV onto a ferry in the UK. So there is massive problems with EV, and yes, they don't last, and it's much more costly. I was just looking at some statistics here, and the Office of now what are they called? They're called the Office of Budget Responsibility of the UK, they're suggesting that government modelling suggests the fiscal cost of transitioning to net zero could total around 21% of GDP by 2050, equivalent to roughly 803 billion in total fiscal impact, including lost fuel duty revenues and public spending. So none of this makes sense. And really, I think people need to push for it to stop, and I just feel that we've just got to keep chipping away. And I know that there's other things like data centers and battery storage facilities are also bursting into flames, and they're putting up those. 100 data centers are being planning permission all over the UK, and those will require lots of energy. Our cost of our energy and outages will go up as well. We'll find our energy being restricted, and water also, they need massive cooling, so our water will be restricted too. So we've got lots to fight for, and I just wish that, I just hope that people actually engage with this and see that this is managed decline of our country, absolutely managed decline, and we have to do something about it.
And if you see the bad actors such as Elon Musk, we used to have his dad on. Didn't do us any good, but he used to have his dad on. His dad was a very lively fellow. But if you look at these, and Bill Gates is visiting our Prime Minister, and obviously talking about data centres which they want to build all over Australia. unless he's talking about some Russian girlfriends of his. But who knows? But what you have is these bad actors. If you look at throughout the US, you've got massive data centers. But what they do, they destroy the water supply because you can't reuse it. Once it's been used to cool that particular center, you can't reuse it. It's polluted. It's got some sort of chemical in it which is unusable. So where do you get rid of that? Does it seep back into the water supply? What about the locals who need water? I mean, oh, don't worry about that. Bottled water. And what about the energy? The energy that's required in the US, they're going to build small nuke power stations to generate enough power or energy to keep these things going. Yet you see governments such as Australia and the UK, it's pushing through, as you mentioned, Sandy, pushing through these issues, these policies that are just going to destroy that particular country. Ben, does it alarm you to see your country, just being run by Monty Python?
I think it's both alarming and sad as well. The sheer amount of change that we've seen in the last 20 years, whether it's to do with climate change, whether it's the mass migration of people from third world countries and very alien cultures moving into small towns, villages, and ultimately nobody has benefited from this. Nobody at all is benefiting. It's not making us richer. It's not improving our quality of life. It's doing everything that's opposite to what these elites are proposing. I think it's scary. I think it's sad. But the fight's not over yet, and we will absolutely be pushing back against these authoritarian measures. I think, as I said earlier, I think Starmer's government has been a bit of an awakening to a lot of people in the UK. If you look on social media at the moment, I've never seen ratios like it. The guy is really disliked. There are seats in what we knew as the Red Wall, which is in the north of England. I think it's completely shattered. I think Reform will walk a lot of those seats, and we may be in for a chance of actually making some change in the coming years. But like I say, we've got a few years yet of battle before we get to that. One last point as well, just while we were on the electric car topic. I raised earlier that by 2030, the government wants to ban petrol and diesel engines. And I think it fits in as well with some of these 15-minute cities, the congestion zones, the ULEZ that we see in London. I read that there isn't actually enough lithium in the world to replace all of the internal combustion engine vehicles that are on the road. So actually, along with the other policies that are in place, it really speaks to me that the freedom of car travel will eventually be reserved for those elites only. And us, the serfs, we shall stay in our towns and we shall stay in our villages and we shall work and we shall pay tax. And our freedom to travel around the country and those freedoms that we've enjoyed for many, many years will be gone. And I think that's, like I say, I think it's very scary, but also I think it's really sad too.
Mm. Sandy, we are wrapping this up now. Just in the next 30 seconds, if you can give us your views on about the 15-minute cities and about the UK. I know it's a lot to talk about in that time, but you're an expert, so you shouldn't have any trouble.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with what Ben says. I feel that that all these measures they're taking are temporary measures, and actually the idea is to get rid of car travel altogether, and to restrict people in an almost Hunger Games situation in their locality. And they've got plans to dissolve Parliament in the UK. Believe it or not, it's in the Cities and Communities Act 2016 and the Devolution White Paper. All the powers of Parliament will be devolved to these smart city mayors. So you've got a Sadiq Khan in every single region of the UK, which will be boiled down to 7 regions, just like the Hunger Games. And they will be in charge of everything. They'll be in charge of police and crime commissioning, everything. All the powers that Whitehall once had will be devolved to these mayors without any democratic, rollout. I mean, basically, you won't have any say what these mayors will do. So they'll bring in climate lockdowns. They'll bring in all sorts of things that aren't going to be democratically addressed. And that's what we're looking at. And we're looking at, also the takeover of our farmland at the moment and the attack on our farmers. We are an island, and we have to be careful, because they've said in the Absolute Zero document that went through our parliament that there will be no imports or exports in or out of the UK by 2049. So we are an island. We have to remember that this is also important. The destruction of farming, it's all a plan to bring that Hunger Games situation to the UK.
And Ben, you have 30 seconds.
But that's why we have to fight it, and that's why people have to be aware of it. Yeah.
Absolutely. I think it is time that we start standing up and saying, hey, we never asked for this. We never voted for it. It's not made clear in your manifestos. You don't speak about it in public debates before elections. But once you get elected, after you've made all of these promises that you seem to fail to keep, you seem to swan off and do your own thing and push your own agendas. I think we really, really need to push for a return to an environment where we hold our politicians and our local government officers and our civil servants to account. Because if we don't, these terrible things, I think, are going to come true. And like Sandy says, by 2049, by 2050, we're going to be looking at a very, very, very bad world for us to live in. And it's not one that I want to be a part of. So, yes, I think we need to stand up. We need to start speaking out against it. No matter what side of the political spectrum you're actually on. Authoritarianism is the same, it's one side of the same coin. So whether you're left wing or right wing, I think we need to both, all come together and stand up against this government overreach and this dictatorial approach and control of our lives.
Well done. Ben, by the way, if somebody wants to find out more about you, how do they do that?
I am on Twitter, so it's Ben Fisher _, or you can do a search for me on Facebook. I think my profile's now authenticated, so it should come up. But I'll be happy to share some details with your producer after as well. And
Sandy, same thing for you. How do we find out more about you?
Yes, I'm on Twitter. I'm at Sandy Adams 2030. I do have a website which I'm updating. It's really more about how I started with Agenda 21, but it's very valid nevertheless. That's sandyadams.net. And what else? I think that's it really. Twitter's probably the best way to find me. Yeah. I
just got a text from Elon saying it's not Twitter, it's X. Sorry. We used to have his dad on. I mean, anyway, so, that's why we've been absolutely smashed. We're a tier 1 with a big cross next to our name. Anyway, that's another story. I'll be told off by Jen if I go on to that one. Sandy and Ben, sounds like a new show on the BBC coming to you next week. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much.
We'll talk to you again shortly. This is The Protagonists, and this is The World Today.
If you missed your favorite show or interview, visit episodes on our website at theworldtoday.news. Our live shows are also on X, Facebook, YouTube, Rumble, Kick, and Twitch. Now there really is no reason to miss out on anything on theworldtoday.news.
For The World Today, this is James O'Neill. Senior Kremlin security official Dmitry Medvedev said the world is becoming increasingly dangerous and urged restraint, while insisting Russia does not want a global conflict. In remarks reported by Reuters, Medvedev said Western countries have repeatedly ignored Russian interests and warned that the global pain threshold is falling. Although he said Russia is not crazy and does not seek world war, he cautioned that a global conflict cannot be ruled out. Medvedev made the comments as U.S. envoys attempt to negotiate an end to the Ukraine war and amid broader international tensions in January. President Trump jokingly suggested that the United States could expand by adding Canada, Greenland, and Venezuela as new states during remarks at the Alfalfa Club dinner, according to the Washington Post. Witnesses said Trump later described the comments as humor. He quipped that Canada could become the 51st state, Greenland the 52nd, and Venezuela the 53rd, while reiterating his long-standing interest in acquiring Greenland for strategic and security reasons. President Trump has previously argued Canada would be better off as part of the U.S. and recently threatened tariffs over Ottawa's China ties. He also referenced improved relations with Venezuela's interim leadership following the capture of President Nicolas Maduro and renewed U.S. interest in the country's oil sector. UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer has called for former ambassador to Washington, Peter Mandelson, to quit Parliament and give up his title following new revelations from Jeffrey Epstein-related emails. Downing Street said Starmer requested urgent investigations into Mandelson's past contact with Epstein during his time as a minister under previous Labour governments. Newly released documents allegedly suggest Mandelson shared confidential briefings, assisted Epstein's associates, and received money from Epstein, claims he is denied. Additional controversy followed reports geolocating a photograph of Mandelson to Epstein's Paris apartment. Former Prime Minister Gordon Brown has requested a formal inquiry. Marianne Maréchal, leader of the Identity Liberties Party in the European Parliament, said she will not run in France's next presidential election and will instead support the National Rally's candidate. Speaking to BFM TV, Maréchal said she hopes her aunt, Marine Le Pen, will be allowed to stand in 2027, arguing judges should not decide presidential eligibility. Le Pen is appealing a conviction over alleged misuse of EU funds that includes a ban on running for office. If Le Pen is barred, Maréchal said she will back National Rally President Jordan Bardella, citing his readiness to lead and represent the movement. An 18-year-old Swiss citizen has died from injuries sustained in a deadly bar fire in the alpine resort of Crans-Montana, raising the death toll to 41 1 month after the incident. Swiss prosecutors said the teenager died Saturday in a Zurich hospital. Investigators believe sparkling candles placed on champagne bottles ignited the blaze after coming too close to the ceiling at the crowded La Constellation bar shortly after midnight on January 1st. Authorities are examining whether ceiling soundproofing met safety rules and whether candles were permitted. Fire safety inspections had not been conducted since 2019. A criminal investigation into the bar's owners remains ongoing. Rome has introduced a mandatory €2 admission fee for tourists and non-residents who want close access to the Trevi Fountain starting Monday. The measure aims to manage overcrowding at the landmark, which attracts millions of visitors each year. Residents of Rome and its metropolitan area can enter for free with valid identification, while children under 6, people with disabilities, and authorized tour guides are exempt. Sir Keir Starmer spoke about Britain's relationship with China at PMQ.
Understand that engagement makes us stronger. Mr. Speaker, protecting our national security is non-negotiable. We're clear-eyed about the threats coming from China in that regard, and we will never waver in our efforts to keep the British people safe.
We'll be back with another news break at the top of the next hour. This has been James O'Neill for The World Today.
Everyone has a reason. It could be good grub, your liquid gold, or more golden years. For someone you know, for parents you don't, or because 1 in 3 of us will need blood in our lifetime. For every reason to become a donor, there's an even bigger reason: life.
With your help, we can continue to fight for freedom, reach new audiences, and bring important information to the public free of charge. This is not possible without your generosity. Join our quest for the truth and our freedom and donate today, telling it as it is. This is today's News Talk, The World Today.
Makers are facing more travel.
When we're on the go, it's easy to go into our own world. Keep your mind on the road.
Our beautiful world is changing, withering, dying by the hands of those who don't value nature, even though we all depend on it for life itself. But there is hope. Together with caring friends, the Nature Conservancy can restore our lands, heal our waters, and save our wildlife with big solutions only nature can provide. But every day we lose more of the places we love, and we urgently need to save endangered lands, waters, and wild species. The actions we take today will determine the tomorrow we leave to our children and grandchildren. The water they drink, the air they breathe, the beauty they experience. To learn more about how you can help protect and conserve our beautiful world, visit nature.org today.
Asthma is a growing problem, especially among children. Asthma affects the quality of life for millions like me every single day. My name is Chris Draft, and I have asthma. And I've spent more than a decade in the NFL tackling asthma on and off the field. Join me in the EPA in helping people control their asthma. Asthma is a lung condition that can be controlled through medication and by avoiding things that can make it worse. 3 steps are the solution to controlling asthma. Step 1, talk to a doctor. Step 2, make a plan. And step 3, get rid of things that can make it worse. Asthma can be tackled. For more information on asthma, log on to epa.gov/asthma.
We're today's News Talk, The World Today.
And welcome back to The World Today. Really enjoyed the protagonists, and I think Starmer and the government are just dreadful, and hopefully we can do something. How to destroy communities, bring in those 15-minute cities. Eric Kraus is a Russia expert, a French national, who has spent his entire career in finance in Moscow, and a magnificent city too, beginning in 1997 as head of fixed income for Dresdner Bank, and following the 1998 crisis as managing director of Uralsib Bank and then Sovlink Bank, where he authored the best-known Russian strategy publication, Truth and Beauty and Russian Finance. Now, we speak today about his expert views about recent developments in the Ukraine-Russia conflict and what Ukraine might look like when and be governed when Russia wins the war, and Russia will win the war. Eric, thank you for joining me.
Good to be here. Thank you.
What's the latest in the situation with the, in the actual conflict at the moment with Ukraine?
It's a bit difficult to get, day by day information on the ground. The nature of warfare has really changed with drones, and instead of massive waves of thousands of men moving across the landscape, you've got raids of 6, 8, 10 on motorbikes. The Ukraine's walls are gradually crumbling. And Russia is progressing towards a total clearing of the Donbass. It's taking a little longer. I had expected it would be over by about now, by the fourth quarter. And I think now for them to clear the rest of the land of Donbass, which is, in their words, currently occupied by Ukraine, by the Kiev regime, I think it's going to take some time until the next few months. But the outcome has been obvious.
We have a slight issue at the moment. Hopefully Eric will... No, he's just dropped out one of those days. But he'll come back. Here he is. He's back again. Eric, sorry about that. You just dropped out, but you're back again.
I hope so.
Yes, we can actually hear you. You have a very bad internet connection. I'm looking at it at the moment. It says 1 bar. So the Western media, it's just incredibly a bunch of lies as far as I'm concerned. They keep saying, we keep reading, I mean, even our national broadcaster in Australia says Russia is having huge losses and Ukraine is winning. Because that alone distorts what's really happening with Ukraine and Russia, because the rest of the world who believe legacy media think that Ukraine's doing a great job and we should stick with them and spend more money. And that's basically what it's all about, isn't it? Just to win the hearts of those that are very ignorant to the actual truth with Ukraine and Russia.
This is the first war in recorded history which has been fought mostly by PR agents. Remember at the beginning of the war, Zelensky was doing Vogue photo shoots. It was a cross between Mick Jagger, Mother Teresa, and the Dalai Lama. And people believed it. I mean, the vast majority of mankind believes what they are told in the media. Obviously, there is much more skepticism now. But friends of mine who are reasonably well educated and intelligent, still, they read the Sunday Times, and the Sunday Times tells them that Ukraine is fighting for its freedom against those Russian invaders. There's no mention of the slaughter of Russian-speaking Ukrainians for 8 years before Russia finally did intervene, of the fascist roots of the Zelensky Kiev regime, of the Azov brigades, lionizing the great hero of Ukraine is Stepan Bandera, who was a Nazi. I mean, literally. So I've almost given up arguing at times. People will believe what they want to believe. This war is not going to be settled at the negotiating. This war is going to be settled, like pretty much all wars before it, on the battlefield. And at some point, the Ukraine will have to capitulate. And the question is when. And yes, by pumping money in, the EU is simply prolonging a conflict which it cannot win, and which is going to cost it very dearly. And I think that is the most important thing that everyone is missing. The United States who caused all of this. I mean, it was Project Ukraine. It was Ms. Nuland and the neocons who created the coup d'etat in Maidan. And now the Americans are waltzing away onto new adventures in Venezuela, in Iran, in Greenland. Who would have thought? And so they have other, they lose interest very quickly. They have short attention spans. And if you think of the fortunate Afghans, when the Americans pulled out, they left people starving. They left children dying of malnutrition. It wasn't their problem. They weren't going to pay reparations. Well, Europe doesn't have that option. Europe cannot afford to have a failed Ukrainian state armed to the teeth, bitter, angry, dangerous on its border. So they are going to have to come up with trillions of euros to rebuild.
It's incredible, isn't it? I mean, I was there when Prigozhin was making a move on Putin, and the calls I got from family and friends saying, "You have to get out. You're in trouble. You're not going to come out of it alive." And the Russians around me were saying, "It'll blow over. It's all right." And that's exactly what happened. But I did have a couple of whiskeys just to get into the mood.
That's always helpful.
Yeah, it does. It was at a lovely hotel, Carlton was it? But and I go back to the ignorance part and the information operation that they're pumping out at the moment. At the end of the day, the truth always wins out. And how do you think the rest of the world will be when this is finished? Ukraine has flown the white flag in some particular way. Russia has stopped sending troops, and it gets back to a sort of peace. It's never going to be that for a long time, but at least you're going to have less killing and stuff. How will the rest of the world go when they realise that they've been told lies all along, that this was not about democracy, it was not about freedom, it was all about basically money and power and corruption?
They will invent narratives. The wonderful thing about being a journalist is never having to say, I'm sorry. I'm not referring to you personally, but I'm referring to the mainstream. Do you really imagine that the FT is going to acknowledge defeat, failure, that they were misled? You will still meet Americans who will tell you that they won in Vietnam. They just decided to come home for a break. What I am hoping is that this will be the end of a certain number of political careers in Europe. The current establishment, Michel Macron in Paris, Merz and his colleagues in Germany, I do think they are going to come out somewhat discredited. And that is probably, and I don't know European politics as well as some others, but I think that is one of the reasons they're so desperate to keep this story going, because they cannot find a way to explain away the failure, but especially the massive drain of funds, which is going to follow. Ukraine has been demanding immediate admission to the EU, as if anyone could demand that. And the EU is saying no, because that means that basically the living standards of Ukrainians have to come up to the living standards of Europeans, which we're talking there about tens of trillions of dollars. Nobody has that kind of money. So even without that, even with any attempt to reconstitute the Ukraine, the industry has been destroyed, infrastructure has been destroyed, half the population is gone. And there are going to be an awful lot of widows and cripples and orphans, very unfortunately, left over from this adventure. Another neo-colonial adventure turned out badly. But this is not going to reflect well on the European political class. But I trust them to find some way to try to put lipstick on the pig.
That's an interesting thought. I'm just getting off track here a bit. I mean, the world has always used the Russians as the villains. Always the villains, got gold teeth or whatever. You lived in Russia for such a long time.
Yeah.
That could not be further away from the truth than I've ever seen before. I mean, I found the Russian people, like people in all countries. There's good ones and there's bad ones, but generally they don't want to be killed. They don't want to kill. So why do we have this? And you think it would just disappear after a couple of decades, but it's still there. It's as strong as it was 10 years ago, and as strong as it was 20 years ago.
It's much stronger than 10 years ago. Yeah. The people need a villain. They have comic book minds. There are a lot of comic book minds out there, and they need a bad guy. They need a simple narrative, good and evil. The guys in the white hats and the guys in the black hats. And the Russians make, and the UK, it has been this way for 200 years. Since the First Crimean War, we should call it, Russia has been demonized. And it's easy because it's Asiatic, it's foreign, nobody knows much about it. They speak this really difficult language. The streetcars are driven by bears. There is a completely comical view I mean, even when I lived there, I remember having some French friends who came for a weekend and for a short week and said to me, "Hey, I think we got on the wrong plane." And I said, "Why?" And I said, "Well, we were expecting to see people shooting each other on all the street corners and, having to duck out of the way." And it's a prosperous, modern city, happening like Paris was in the 1980s. It's a very developed and a very modern place. Phenomenal cultural life, great theater, art, ballet, the world's best ballet. So there is simply the media have misled, and they've been told to mislead. And the FT is owned by the Japanese, and the Japanese has some issues. Nikkei has some issues with Russia. And the British establishment, Mr. Johnson, has built a political career out of hating Russia. And it has proved profitable. So, they want to continue.
What have you heard on the latest with the peace talks? I think they're in, if I'm wrong, I think they're in Abu Dhabi, aren't they? On the 5th of February, Zelensky, Putin, and the US. How do you think this will go? I mean, and Putin just bombed a power station. Unfortunately, killed some people in trucks and whatever. But so he's not winding back his attack on Ukraine because he wants it finished. And why should he? But I'm just, in a couple of days' time, we could have at least a ceasefire. I have a question though, just a bit of tongue in cheek here. After the last episode where Putin was invited to be at a particular place, and it was lucky he moved, do you think he'll go to this already preordained space he's supposed to go to, or will he send in a double just in case they bomb that one too?
Okay, well, I wasn't aware of the bombing, but what I can tell you, very for the last 6 months, for the simple reason that Russia has been very clear about its war.
And we just lost Eric for a moment. Now, Eric will come back. He just has a couple of connectivity issues there, talking about Ukraine and Russia. And Eric Krause certainly knows what he's doing. Eric, we just dropped out. We'll come back to you. If you just wind back to the start.
I'm sorry, I'll get a different internet connection next time. Very sorry. I thought I'm on Starlink. Must be Musk who's interfering with us. I've been as I was saying, I've been very skeptical about the peace talks for the simple reason that Zelensky is not a president, he is an actor. He was put in place. He forgot that he is only an actor. He is not the director, he's not the cinematographer, he's not the scenarist. So, but he's fallen in love with his role. And the Europeans are encouraging this delusion. And Russia is not going to compromise. Russia is the winning party in this war, and it is the winning party which sets the terms of peace. Think Germany in 1945. To imagine that Putin is going to now compromise is simply foolish. They've laid out their terms. The terms have got to be accepted pretty much as is. Some of the details can be negotiated. Trump is trying to settle it, but he seems to change his mind like he changes his shirts. So I don't put a lot of faith in that. I really think that this war, I could be wrong. We could get a peace settlement. I hope so. There are too many dead people running around. But I would be very happy if there was, but I would be very surprised. I think until Russia actually militarily clears the Donbass and starts to threaten Odessa, the other side has no reason at this point to capitulate. What do they have to lose? A few more dead Ukrainians? Well, that didn't bother them until now.
We'll fast forward here. Imagine that we have a ceasefire, then we have a peace deal. Then we're looking at elections within Ukraine. Personally, I'm not very hopeful any positive outcome to come out of those, the ceasefire or the peace deal with an election process. History says that Ukraine it's been corrupt since Adam was a boy. How do we get around the oligarchs and how do we get around the inherent and ensconced corruption that is part and parcel of the entire process of government in Ukraine?
You don't. I mean, I lived there briefly, and I did a lot of business with Ukraine when I was living in Russia. Yeah, it was even in finance, even in bond finance, there was a great deal of corruption. And the funny thing is, I know a lot of Westerners who made a great deal of money in Russia. And I don't know anyone who made any money in Ukraine. They won't let you take it. The system, what I think is going to happen is the war will end. The Ukraine is going to be largely devastated. There's going to be a lot of bitterness, and it will initially be directed towards Russia. But I think very quickly, people will begin to realize how badly they were played, and that all the promises made by the West don't come true. They're not going to become members of the EU. Mr. Trump is not going to make them the 56th or 57th state. I don't know how many new ones he's created, but there is going to be a lot of bitterness and disappointment. And I think that Europe is going to have to deal with this. Now, on the other hand, yes, there has been a lot of ethnic hatred created, which 20 years ago didn't exist. There was sort of a joking, like between the English and the Scots, a bit of some joking, we'd needle each other. But there was no hatred. Everyone spoke Russian in Kiev. No one spoke Ukrainian, maybe at home or with a grandmother. But remember, it was part of the same country until '89. Ukrainians went to university in Moscow. Russians went to work in Kiev. There was a lot of intermarriage. Everyone has Ukrainian friends. So this hatred has been created. It has really very little historical root except in the far west of the country, Galicia, which is really Poland. It's not Ukraine, though they would debate that. So there is going to be a very messy situation. And the longer the Europeans push for this war to continue, the easier it's going to be for the Russian side, because the Ukraine is not going to pose much of a threat to anyone for years to come, because it is going to be so badly damaged. The notion that they could then, raise a 300,000-man army and invade Russia is so far out there.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. If there was this peace deal, what would happen to for example, the SBU? There are secret police.
I'm sure they'll manage to keep their jobs.
It'll become secret.
I wouldn't worry about them. They will repackage themselves. I do not know who would win a free and fair election, but I don't think it's a very valid, very relevant question, because there isn't going to be one.
No.
One would assume that there will be a setup whereby Zelensky or his chosen successor, somebody loyal to the Washington, Brussels axis, is going to be elected. I would not expect a neutral or a pro-Russian character to win, especially because the most pro-Russian areas of Ukraine are now part of Russia. They are, the Donbass, Luhansk, etc., are now Russian, and therefore will not be allowed to vote. And the interesting thing is, you've got millions and millions of Ukrainians living in Russia. Are they going to be allowed to vote? If so, then you're going to get a very pro-Russian candidate. But I think they will find a way to avoid that. I mean, look at the situation with Romania, where it's mostly the Romanians abroad who voted for the pro-NATO candidate. Well, in Russia, of course, the Ukrainians would be voting Russian because they are Russian, because they speak Russian, because ethnicity is Russian, because their culture is Russian. And Ukraine is kind of folklore, but it is not their identity.
Yeah, I'm just thinking, I would imagine one of the, and actually it's never going to happen, there's another stupid question, but I'll ask it anyway. If there is a peace deal, what do you do with the Nazis? You can't get rid of them. It's part and parcel of it. So how do we control that?
Mr. Putin frequently talks about denazification, and I don't think that is an attainable goal. You are not going to be able to purge you're not going to have a Nuremberg trial. It's not going to happen. So at best, there is going to be, I also think there may be a split up of the rump Ukraine. Remember, there are various countries with various territorial claims, and it's all sort of holding together right now because it's wartime. But when the shooting stops and the damage has to be repaired, then there are going to be parts which are pulling apart. They could have avoided this entire nightmare situation by creating the Ukrainian Federation, analogous to the Russian Federation or the Swiss Federation, where you had different areas with different ethnic identities, but common foreign policy, common economic, currency, etc. So a mixture, a federal system could have worked. Well, now it strikes me as very difficult. And Mr. Putin is demanding ethnic and linguistic and religious rights for the Ukrainians of whatever ethnicity. But I would be surprised if they actually allow this. There is a fierce nationalism, what you refer to as the Nazis, and they do have fascist roots, but what they are is hyper-nationalist. They don't want anyone speaking anything but Ukrainian. They don't want anybody wearing anything but traditional Ukrainian dress. There is this absolute nightmare which caused all of the disasters of the 19th and 20th centuries, which is extreme nationalism and the hatred for one's neighbors of different ethnicities. So I'm afraid the Nazis are going to be with us for a while. That's my guess.
Mm. What about the frozen assets if we get to this stage? Will Europe be able to keep them, or does it go back to its rightful owner?
Everybody seems to forget that Russia has frozen rather more in private European and American assets than the Europeans managed to grab of Russian assets. Now, the owners of these assets are going to be demanding or asking or begging or pleading that their governments find some way to get them, their planes, their factories, their trademarks, their land back. And Russia is only going to do so in a pari passu manner. You give us back ours, we'll give you back yours. How this can be done, because we're talking about public assets. Frozen Russian assets are overwhelmingly public versus private assets. And I don't know any juridical history. I don't know any story of such a swap being performed, but somebody's going to have to figure it out. Russia is not going to walk away from these assets without grabbing its own pound of flesh.
Finally, and again, appreciate your time very much. This is a very enthralling conversation. How do you see the lay of the land? Will it go the way, actually, it's going different directions. Everyone's got a theory. You probably have a very good idea on the lay of the land and where this will head to. Where do you see Ukraine, Russia, and the combined two entities? Where do you see them being in the next, would you say, a year's time?
As I said, in a year's time, it's going to be extremely messy. That's going to be the phase of the post-war, when there's going to be a lot of wound licking and attempts at reconstruction and a growing disappointment in the Kiev regime, that the Westerners have not come up. I mean, already you see Zelensky demanding this and demanding that, and just wait till the shooting is over. And he's going to be expecting trillions, and they're not coming. Nobody has that kind of money anymore. So I think it's going to get worse before it gets better from the let's say the background, the music standpoint, and then gradually people are going to have to work. And look at Georgia. I mean, Georgia was fiercely anti-Russian for a few years. Now they're back in the Russian orbit quite happily. They have realized that Russia is their major neighbor, is the most important investor, that they have a lot of shared history. And the Russians aren't so bad after all. I mean, the Europeans are worse. So I would hope, and this is a hope, it's not a prediction, that gradually there will be an entente, there will be an understanding that the Ukrainians were badly played by the West, and they want back home. Russia is their major neighbor. It's the major supply of energy. It's the major supply of resources. It's the major supplier of capital. They all speak Russian. And it's going to look to them a lot more attractive than perhaps Germany or Sweden.
Eric, this has been fascinating, and would like to do more in the next few weeks, if you wouldn't mind. I was just seeing that you're in Hong Kong. You're wearing short sleeve shirt.
Absolutely.
But you couldn't do that in Russia at the moment.
Probably. I'm pretty good with the cold, but I mean, here I'm only wearing a button-down shirt because I'm on the tube.
You're in a magnificent city. You're in a magnificent city at the moment, and enjoy the warmth. Eric, if somebody wants to find out more about you, do you do socials and stuff like that?
Oh God, yeah. I think I'm on Facebook. I don't do Twitter. I used to be very public. I'm a little less so now because of business reasons. But you can find me on Facebook, or you can email me at krausmoscow@yahoo.com.
Fantastic.
Anything interesting, I'll answer. Anything
Eric,
silly, I won't bother.
It's and people should, if they get a chance, go to Moscow. It is not dangerous. It is not dangerous. Magnificent city. I took my phone with me, and I was just walking through the Red Square and streaming back to my wife, and she was shocked. She thought I would have been thrown in handcuffs and dragged off to the front line.
Yeah, we get this a lot. No, it's you can walk home. Your wife can walk home safely at 3 o'clock in the morning, any place in Moscow, and you don't even think about it. You don't worry about it. You can take the metro anytime. It's absolutely safe. It's clean. It's fast. Try that in London.
You can. But the worst thing about Moscow is the traffic. It's dreadful. Yeah.
The weather ain't so great either, mate. But we live with it.
We live with it. Eric, thank you very much. Eric Kraus, thank you so much for your time. This is The World Today.
Growing up, my father enjoyed a drink. It was just part of our culture. So you might have started drinking at 15 or 16, and so then it's just a slippery slope. As it affected me in the end, it was to the point where I couldn't even have money in my bank account because, I'd go to the pub or I'd go to the bottle-o. I started roofing in Sydney when I was about 20 years old. I had a crane come down on us. I jumped off the roof and the crane laid exactly down the line I was running. I could have ended up in a disability or life-threatening situation, and through that I developed PTSD. I medicated pretty heavily. I had a pretty pessimistic outlook on life. The glass was always half empty or whatever it was. You don't realise those things are impacting you so much. It's really hard to walk through the world. Depression and those negative feelings lead to thoughts that, you'd be better off not here. Suicidal thoughts are a terrible thing, You look at what you've given your family, you look at what you've taken away from your family. dealing with that for extended periods of time and not talking to people about it is something that's probably taken a toll on me and my family that I didn't realise. My drinking got to a point where I was drinking in the mornings and, I had a job and my boss told me, it wasn't good enough, and I was so lucky that, my boss took me to an AA meeting that night. When you walk into AA, it says on the wall, admit that you can't do this yourself anymore. The second thing is admit that you need God in your life. Having that written there and it just saying, try and turn to the Lord, I thought, well, rightio, now that's my chance. I met Robbie pretty early on. I sort of reached out to him and said, where do I go? And Robbie had been coming to the Salvation Army Church and he said, look, come with me. And we spent a lot of Sundays together. That was pivotal in what I'm doing now. I believe that I was brought here for a reason. I came into the church and I was lucky. There's just so many lovely people here. It's the community as well as the church. One of the members prayed for me. And I think it was in nearly that time that my PTSD was healed and I felt like I belonged in a way. Walking close to the Lord has helped me use my heart more through worshipping the Lord on my own and connecting and drawing him close enough so that he could literally heal me. But when I start to fathom how much healing, glory, there's enough for everyone because that's how it's written, it's never ending. One day after church, I was at home, had an opportunity to see the kids and my littlest boy was there and he was 8. And he looked at me in a way that he'd never looked at me before in his whole life. That's because I was sort of talking to him differently. I was really lucky to have that moment and to see what could happen if I just keep doing the right things and keep walking with the light. That was something that was pretty amazing. I'm going through a bit of a hard season now, with work and things. I think all I can do is move forward positively. But I really look forward to a future where I can see my kids and my boys grow up. So I really look forward to these next years to live a calm, peaceful life.
What is Australia's deadliest predator? The one that hits with more than 30 Gs of force. Strikes in under a second. Leaves catastrophic injury in its wake. You won't hear it, you won't see it, not until it's too late. Australia's deadliest predator isn't found in the wild. It's on our roads. Speeding is the killer.
With your help, we can continue to fight for freedom, reach new audiences, and bring important information to the public free of charge. This is not possible without your generosity. Join our quest for the truth and our freedom and donate today, telling it as it is. This is today's News Talk, The World Today.
And back, our guest didn't turn up, not well, so it's not his fault, and we will reschedule that sometime in the next few days. Enjoy the conversation with Eric, a very, very learned person. And for those thinking the bucket list and where do I go for a holiday, I would truly look at Moscow. It is an amazing, amazing country. You have to take cash in at the moment, I think still, because credit cards don't work because of the or the hoo-ha by the West. But if you can get there, and Emirates fly there, go to Dubai, enjoy the heat, buy some woolies, long underwear, thick underwear, and especially if you're a guy, and hop on the plane and go to Moscow. Magnificent city, great restaurants, people are great. Just the history, it's just fantastic. I'm just having a quick look around. Nigel Farage is set to unveil a $3 billion tax relief package. It's designed to rescue Britain's struggling pub industry. Way overdue. And beer will become cheaper. At the moment, it's exorbitant. I mean, even in Australia, could not believe the cost of beer. And I keep noticing all these lower alcohol And there used to be, beer was like 5 and above, and now it's 4.2 or below. Not all, but most. And it's like, give me a break. If you want a beer, you need something to help you, get through the day. I mean, fancy having a 4.2 beer on your Wheaties or cornflakes in the morning. Fancy having that full stop. And I see also Starmer, Keir Starmer, Prime Minister Starmer, is sort of cozying up to von der Leyen. They're going to have their bi-monthly or fortnightly meetings with Brussels to get that closer, get really close. And then the EU in Brussels can tell the Brits what to do. What could possibly go wrong? Oh, we backed the wrong ones for this war. Now, in the States, Minnesota is always in the news. Unfortunately, right now, it's in the news because of the riots and the ICE police and all sorts of things. Well, we went through our little bag of goodies here. This is called filling out till I hit the top of the hour, but this is pretty good. It's a tourist video for Minnesota. So have a look at this. This is fascinating.
Visit Minnesota, a land of beauty, where more than 10,000 sparkling lakes reflect endless blue skies. Just as memorable as the scenery are the people who call Minnesota home. Minnesotans embody a spirit of kindness and community that visitors feel instantly. If it's cultural diversity you're looking for, we have that too. From angry Somalis to angry lesbians, Minnesota has it all. But Minnesota is so much more. Enjoy winter sports, we have hockey and skiing, and bashing law enforcement SUVs with a metal pipe. Fun. Looking to go out in the evening for entertainment? Check out Minnesota's vibrant music scene. Or maybe an exciting fireworks show is more your speed. And of course, if you just want to spend hours practicing saying someone's name, you've come to the right place. What about the food? Shall we talk about the food? Okay, let's not talk about the food. But if it's cultural enrichment you're after, you can visit one of our world-class leering centers to leer even more about the fine state of Minnesota. So, if you've always wanted to visit Somalia, but are concerned it's too far away, come to Minnesota. Minnesota, because Somalia is too far away.
So there you are. Oops, wrong one. This better. I need like 10 fingers. I actually have 10, well, 2 thumbs. I need 15, pushing buttons and everything. By the way, we had Katie Hopkins at the clip before. Katie Hopkins used to work for us, and she was just absolutely stunning. When we had the audio, we couldn't connect. We tried everything with video. But Katie Hopkins, a great person, a great Brit, fights for the flag and all sorts of stuff. So anybody watching wants to pass on our regards to Katie Hopkins, please do. She was and still is very, very good and is very succinct and straight to the point. Some people can't handle that, can't handle it, can't handle the truth, but I think she's excellent. In Victoria, Australia, we have I'm in Queensland, a governor for the Americans or a premier for Australians, named Jacinta Allen. They had terrible bushfires, horrible, bigger than Donald Trump could ever imagine. And then there was this huge storm. And that happened on the coast, because you get your summer storms. And there was cars, a place called Wye River, just been swept out along the river. They're thrown around like toys because this intense rain, which happens. It's happened since Adam was a boy. You get summer storms in Australia. What's the a land of sweeping plains, droughts and stuff, and pouring rains. Anyway, that's what Australia is. It just happens. So Jacinta Allen comes out and says, this proves that climate change is real. And that's why we're going to destroy the entirety of Victoria by putting up these big interconnector power lines, walkover farmers going to, what else are they going to put solar panels in a valley in Gippsland, magnificent valley, going to bulldoze it and put solar panels there. We're going to save the planet. Climate change, let me just play this because it's a climate hoax. You have to ask yourself, where is the money coming from to do what she wants to do? From private investors. And if those private investors generally, although the government is pouring a bit in it, they're either going to spend all your money or be caught by the short and curlies, such as by China, to provide the funding for the infrastructure, like their tunnel. Isn't it funny? Both Labor governments, Victoria and New South Wales, both have a problem with the ground dropping in from the top. In Victoria, at a I think it was in where was it, around Hawthorne area, the Oval, this great hole went, big sinkhole, where they were digging the tunnel, so they had to stop. Not a good sign. In New South Wales, Minns, who says you can only talk if you're allowed to by government, great for democracy and free speech, but his tunnel, huge. Talk about a mess. It's a $10 billion fiasco at the moment. Same with Victoria. Labor haven't got a problem spending money on some projects that really shouldn't have started in the first place. Anyway, for those who believe in climate change, you must have a listen to this.
The climate right now is no warmer than it's been many times throughout history. Our baseline is now the lowest that carbon dioxide has been in 600 million years. As far as temperature change, the IPCC's first report of 1992 showed that the medieval warm period was warmer than the present. Well, this didn't fit the narrative, so by the time the 1996 report came out, it was a completely contrived graph called the hockey stick. So what they did was they got rid of the medieval warm period and the Little Ice Age, and so instead of the graph doing this, they flattened it out, and then they added instrumental record on the end that looks like it's going way up. The point is that the people that are calling them out on it are not getting the media coverage. Because look, at this point there's billions of dollars going into the whole climate change narrative.
A hoax about carbon dioxide in the climate has caused a global energy and economic disaster. This is today's News Talk, The World Today.
Back again, almost time. I'm just looking at some chat. Little Miss L. Hello, Little Miss L. I think you're in, aren't you in, I think you're in Australia. Let me know, I'll watch the chat. Very good. Truth, who else? Truth Will Out. Very good. Talking about all sorts of things we were talking about. I see, what's that? Rent-a-boy. Rent-a-boy. No, Rent Boy. I can't believe it. It's just utter filth. And comments about Moscow. It is a beautiful city. That's about it. I have still got 2 minutes. What can I do for 2 minutes? What about Katie Hopkins?
15 minutes of freedom here in the UK. So let me tell you the plan. The plan is in Oxford, and this has just been passed by the council, to divide the city here into, a bit of a squiggly city, into 6 parts. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And you will only have the freedom to operate in the part that you live. So if this is you, the idea is that everybody will live within 15 minutes of the things they need. 15 minutes of a school, 15 minutes of a doctor's, 15 minutes of a supermarket. And if you want to travel to the other zones in your city, or maybe soon your town, you will have to go out an approved route. You will have to journey around the outside of the city in order to re-enter another section of the city. This plan is supposed to be saving the planet. And the idea is that you won't simply be able to cross over into other sections of your city anymore. So if your mother, for example, lived over here, you wouldn't be able to just go across and see her. This would all be done via e-gates, electronic gates, and number plate recognition. You in your area will only be allowed within that 15-minute zone that you've been allocated. The number plate recognition will know if you leave your zone. And you can apply for permission, a permit, to leave your zone and travel to another zone. But you'll only be allowed to do this about 100 times a year. This is real. I just have to stop and say that. This is actually being passed by Oxford Council. This is happening in the next 2 years, 2024 it begins. And if you use up all your 100 passes that someone designates whether you're allowed to have to go into the different zones, you'll be fined. Your number plate will be recognised. It will observe that you've gone somewhere you're not allowed in your own city, and it will fine you £100 or £80 or whatever the fine number is.
There you are. Katie Hopkins. And truthful out, yes, that's okay. A couple of hurty words. I'm going to call the police and report you. They'll go, hello, hello, hello. I like that part, by the way, hello, hello, hello. I've been practicing that forever. That's a guy on the buses. Remember the skinny guy, the funny guy, moustache? He would say hello, hello, hello. And he's a bus driver or conductor or something. Anyway, that's it. Have a great night, day, morning, whatever the case is, wherever you are. And we'll have some news for you maybe next week on Mark II of something that people have many fond memories of. It's coming. And for all those that have supported us at the moment, thank you so much. Have a great day. This has been The World Today.